Uh, Alright then. So, hello. Hopefully you can all see and hear me proper. Yeah, for anyone who is here and present, and new to this, my name is SkitterSkreetch. You can call me Skitter, and I am a rat trapped inside a cursed library. Not a lamp. A lamp is the one who, well, he's not trapped in me. It's a long story. Anyway, hello. Name's Skitter. I'm a rat. I am compelled by a certain lamp that you should be able to see in the screen on the top right to read books for various and sundry reasons, and yeah, we got a few of them today. So first things first, we have continued to expand our collection of Jack London pieces. So these are the 5 new ones. Well, I guess now all new. We've had them for a couple of days, or some of them for a couple of days now anyway. But these are the ones that we have, I guess, not read yet on stream. So, yeah, which are Lost Face, Relic of the Pliocine, the Man on the Trail, and Heathen and the Mexican. All of them are yet to be read. Going to do some of them today, and we're also planning to do this one, which is The Old Man in the Sea by Ernest Hemingway. Now, we haven't done Heathen before, but he's apparently very good, and it's something to do with fish. Yeah, those are what we're going to be read. Now, I haven't made up my mind where we're going to start, so if anyone here is here and has an opinion, feel free to chip in. Otherwise, well, I suppose otherwise I think probably I'll start with some of the London. Yeah, start with one of these. They're a bit shorter. We get one of them in, see how we feel, then probably switch over to Old Man in the Sea. Maybe not. Maybe we should do them all together and then Old Man in the Sea afterwards, or Old Man in the Sea first. Yeah. Let's start with one of these anyway. We'll see how we get on. So, may as well do them in order. So, Lost Face is the first one I found. I'll do that one first. So yeah, as always, I'll do a little bit of commentary afterwards. These are short. If you have any questions, comments, feel free to say. I'll try and get with you. And if you're here to sell me people, or viewers or whatever, die in a fire. Right. It was the end. Zuby and Cow had travelled a long trail of bitterness and horror, homing like a dove for the capitals of Europe. And here, farther away than ever, in Russian America, the trail ceased. He sat in the snow, arms tied behind him, waiting to torture. He stared curiously before him at a huge Cossack, prone in the snow, moaning in his pain. The men had finished handling the giant and turned him over to the women. But they exceeded the fiendishness of the men, the man's cries attested. Zubienka looked on and shuddered. He was not afraid to die. He carried his life too long in his hands. On that weary trail from Warsaw to New Nalato, to shudder at the mere dying. He objected to the torture. It offended his soul. And this offence, in turn, were not due to the mere pain he must endure, but to the sorry spectacle that pain would make of him. He knew he would pray, and beg, and entreat, even as Big Ivan and the others had done before him. This would not be nice. To pass out bravely and cleanly, with a smile and a jest, that would have been the way. To lose control, have his soul upset by the pangs of the flesh, screech and gibber like an ape, become the veriest beast. That was what was so terrible. There had been no chance to escape. From the beginning, when he dreamed the fiery dream of Poland's independence, he had become a puppet in the hands of fate. From the beginning, at Warsaw, St. Petersburg, and the Siberian mines, and Kamchatka, and the crazy boats of the fur thieves, fate had been driving him to this end. Without doubt, in the foundations of the world was graved this end for him. For him who was so fine and sensitive, whose nerves scarcely showed under his skin, who were a dreamer, a poet and an artist. Before he had dreamed of it, it had been determined that the quivering bundle of sensitiveness that constituted him should be doomed to live in raw and howling savagery and die in this far land and night, in this dark place near the vast boundaries of the world. He sighed. So that thing before him was Big Ivan, giant, man without nerves, Man Iron, Cossack turned freebooter of the seas, who was as phlegmatic as an ox, with a nervous system so low that what Pat was paying to ordinary men was scarcely a tickle to him. Well, trust these Nulato Indians to find Big Ivan's nerves and trace him to the roots of his quivering soul. They were certainly doing it. It were inconceivable that a man could suffer so much and yet live. Big Ivan were paying for his low order of nerves. Already he had lasted twice as long as any others. Zubienko felt that he could not stand the Cossack suffering much longer. Why didn't Ivan die? He would go mad if that screaming did not cease. But when it did cease, his turn would come. And there was Yakaga, awaiting him too, grinning at him even now in anticipation. Yakaga, who only last week he had kicked out the fort, and upon whose face he had laid the lash of his dog whip. Yakaga would attend to him. Doubtlessly Yakaga was saving him for more refined tortures, more exquisite nerve-wracking. That must have been a good one, from the way Ivan screamed. The squaws, bending over him, stepped back with laughter and clapping her hands. Zubienko saw the monstrous thing that had been perpetrated, and began to laugh hysterically. The Indians looked at him in wonderment that he should laugh. Zubienko could not stop. This would never do. He controlled himself, spasmodic twitching slowly dying away. He strove to think of other things, and began reading back in his own life. He remembered his mother, his father, and the little spotted pony, the French tutor who had taught him dancing and sneaked him an all-worn copy of Voltaire. Once more he saw Paris, dreary London, and gay Vienna and Rome. Once more he saw that wild group of youths who had dreamed, even as he, dreams of an independent Poland, the King of Poland on the throne at Warsaw. And there it was that the long trail began. Where he had lasted longest. One by one, beginning with the two executed at St. Petersburg, he took up the count of the passing of these brave spirits. Here one had been beaten to death by a jailer, and there on that blood-stained highway of exiles, they had marched for endless months, beaten and maltreated by their Cossack guards. Another had dropped by the way. Always it had been savagery, brutal, bestial savagery. They had died, of fever, in the mines, under the knout. The last two had died after the escape, in the battle with the Cossacks, and he alone had won the Kamchatka with the stolen papers and the money of a traveller he had left lying in the snow. There had been nothing but savagery. All the years of his art and studios and theatres and courts, he had been hemmed in by savagery. He purchased his life with blood. Everybody had killed. He had killed that traveller for his passport. He had proved that he were a man apart by duelling with two Russian officers on a single day. He had to prove himself in order to win a place among the Furfields. He had to win that place. Beyond him lay the 1,000 years long road across all Siberia and Russia. He could not escape that way. The only way was an egg, across the dark and icy sea of Bering to Alaska. That way had led from savagery to deeper savagery, from the scurvy rotten ship with a fur feed, out of food and out of water, buffeted by the interminable storms of that stormy sea, men become animals. Thrice he had sailed east from Kamchatka. Thrice, after all manner of hardships and suffering, survivors had come back to Kamchatka. There had been no outlet for escape. He could not go back the way he had come. The mines and the knout awaited him. Again, the fourth and last time he had sailed east. He had been with those who first found the fabled Seal Island. He had not returned with them to share the wealth of furs and mad orgies of Kamchatka. He had sworn never to go back. He knew that to win those dear capitals of Europe he must go on. So he changed ships and remained in the dark new land. His comrades were Slavonian hunters and Russian adventurers, Mongols and Tartars and Siberian aborigines. And through the savages of the New World they had cut a path of blood. They had massacred old villages that refused to furnish the fur tribute, and they in turn had been massacred by ship's companies. He with one fin had been the sole survivor of such a company. They had spent a winter of solitude and starvation on a lonely Aleut Nile, and their rescue in the spring by another fur ship had been one chance in 1,000. But always a terrible savagery had hemmed him in, passing from ship to ship, and never refusing to return and come to the ship and explored south. All down the Alaska coast they had encountered nothing but hosts of savages. Every anchorage among the beetling islands and over the frowning cliffs of the mainland had meant a battle or storm. Either gales blew, threatening destruction, or the war canoes came off, manned by howling natives, with war paint on their faces, and came to learn the bloody virtues of the sea rover's gunpowder. South they had coasted, clear to the mythland of California. Here it was said were Spanish adventurers who had fought their way up from Mexico. He had hopes of those Spanish adventurers, escaping with them. The rest would have been easy. A year or two, what did it matter, more or less? And he would win to Mexico, and a ship in Europe with years. They had met no Spaniards. Only had they encountered the same impregnable wall of savagery. The denizens of the confines of the world, anchored for war, had driven them back from the shores. At last, when one boat was cut off and every man killed, the commander had abandoned the quest and sailed back to the north. The years had passed. He had served under Tedesco when initial Escort Redoubt were built. He had spent 2 years in the Cossack Wind country. 2 summers in the month of June, he had managed to be at the head of Godsphere Sound. Here at this time, the tribes assembled for barter. Here were to be found spotted deer skins from Siberia, ivory from the Diomedes, walrus skins from the shores of the Arctic. Strange stone lamps passing in trade from tribe to tribe, no one knew when. And once a hunting knife with English made. And here, Bianco knew, a school in which to learn geography. We met Eskimos from Norton Sound, King Island and St. Lawrence Island, from Cape Prince of Wales and Point Barrow. Such places had other names, and their distances were measured in days. They were a vast region these trading savages came from, a vaster region from which, by retreating trade, their stone lamps and their steel knife had come from. Zubienko bullied and cajoled and bribed. Every far journeyer a strange tribesman were brought before him. Perils unaccountable and unthinkable were mentioned, as well as wild beasts, hostile tribes, impenetrable forests, and mighty mountain ranges. But always from beyond came the rumour, the tale of white-skinned men, blue of eye and fair as hair, fought like devils, who sought always for birds. They were the East, far, far east. No one had seen them. It was the word that had passed along. It was an iron school. One could not learn geography very well through the medium of strange dialects, dark minds that mingled back to the fable, and were measured distance by sleep, varied according to the difficulty of going. But at last came the whisper that gave Subienko courage. In the east lay a great river, and these blue-eyed men. Who were these blue-eyed men? The river was called the Yukon. South of the Mikolovsky redoubt emptied another great river, which the Russian knew as the Quickpack. These 2 rivers were one, ran the whispers. Subienko returned to Mikolovsky. For a year he urged an expedition up the Quickpack. Then arose Malakov, a Russian half-breed, believed the wildest and most ferocious of the Elsprat and Mongol adventurers, who had crossed from Kamchatka. Subienko was his lieutenant. They threaded the mazes of the great delta of the Quickpack, picked up the first low hills on the northern bank, and for 500 miles, the skin canoes loaded with the gunwales with trade goods and ammunition, fought their way against the 5-knot current of a river that ran from 2 to 10 miles wide and a channel many fathoms deep. Malakov decided to build the fort at Nulata. Subienko urged to go further, but he quickly reconciled himself to Nulata. A long winter was coming on. It would be better to wait. Early the following summer, when the ice was gone, he would disappear at the Quickpack and work his way with the Hudson's Bay Company's post. Malakov had never heard the whisper that the Quickpack was the Yukon, and Subienko did not tell him. Came the building of the fort. They were in forced labour. Tiered walls of logs arose to the sighs and groans of the Nulato Indians. The lash were laid upon their backs, and were in with the iron of hand and freebooters of the sea that laid on the land. There were Indians that ran away, and when they were caught they were brought back and spread eagle before the fort, where they and their tribe learned the efficacy of the noun. 2 died under it, others were injured for life, and the rest took the lesson to heart and ran away no more. The snow would fly ere the fort was finished, and then it was time for fur, and heavy tribute was laid upon the tribe. Blows and lashings continued, and that tribute should be paid. The women and the children were held as hostages and treated with the barbarity that only the fur could. Well, it had been a sowing of blood, and now would come the harvest. The fort were gone, and the light of it was burning. Half the fur thieves had been cut down, the other half had passed under the torture. Only Subienko remained, or Subienko and Big Ivan, the whimpering moaning thing in the snow could be called Big Ivan. Subienko caught Yakaga grinning at him. There were no set gainsaying Yakaga. The mark of the lash was still on his face. After all, Subienko could not blame him, but he disliked the thought of what Yakaga would do to him. He thought of appearing in the Makmak, the head chief, who His judgment told him that such appeal were useless. Then too he thought of bursting his bonds and dying fighting. Such an end would be quick, but he could not break his bonds. The coward whose thongs were stronger than he. Still devising, another thought come to him. He signed for Macamuck, and an interpreter who knew the coast dialect should be brought. "On Macamuck," he said, "I am not minded to die. I am a great man, and it were foolish for me to die. In truth I shall not die. I am not like these other carrion." He looked at the moaning thing that had once been Big Ivan, and stirred it contemptuously with his toe. "I am too wise to die. Behold, I have great medicine. I alone know this medicine. So I am not going to die. I shall exchange this medicine with you." "What is this medicine?" "It is a strange medicine." Zubienko debated with himself for a moment, as if loath to part with the secret. "I will tell you. A little bit of this medicine, rubbed on the skin, makes the skin hard like rock, hard like iron, so that no cutting weapon can cut it. The strongest blow of a cutting weapon is a vain thing against it. A bone knife comes like a piece of mud, and will turn the edge of the iron knives we have brought among you. And what will you give me for the secret of the medicine?" "I will give you your life," Macamuck made answer, through it an interpreter. Zubienko laughed scornfully. "And you shall be a slave in my house until you die." Paul laughed more scornfully. "Untie my hands and feet, and let us talk." The chief made the sign, and when he were loosed, Zubienko rolled the cigarette and lighted it. "This is foolish talk," said Macamuck. "There is no such medicine. It cannot be. A cutting edge is stronger than any medicine." The chief were incredulous, and yet wavered. He had seen too many deviltries at birth to use the word. He could not wholly doubt. "I will give you your life, but you shall not be a slave," he announced. "More than that." Zubienko played his game coolly, as if he were bartering for a fox skin. "It is a very great medicine, and saved my life many times. I want a sled and dogs, and 6 of your hunters to travel with me down the river and give me safety to one day's sleep from Mikhailovsky Redoubt." "You must live here and teach us all your deviltries," was the reply. Zubienko shrugged his shoulders and remained silent. He blew cigarette smoke out in the icy air, and curiously regarded what remained of the big Cossack. "That scar," Macamuck said suddenly, pointing to Paul's neck, where a livid mark advertised a slash of a knife. "A Kamchatkan gruel. The medicine is not good. The cutting edge was stronger than the medicine." "It was a strong man that drove the stroke," Zubienko considered. "Stronger than you, stronger than your strongest hunter, stronger than he." Again, with the toe of his moccasin, he touched the Cossack, grisly spectacle, no longer conscious, yet in whose dismembered body the pain-racked life clung, was loath to glow. Also the medicine were weak, for at that place there were no berries of a certain kind, of which I see you have plenty in this country. The medicine here will be strong. "I will let you go down river," said Macamuck, "and the sled and the dogs and the 6 hunters to give you safety should be yours." "You are slow," said the rejoinder. "You have committed an offence against my medicine, and you did not at once accept my terms. Behold, I now demand more. I want 100 beaver skins," Macamuck sneered. "I want 100 pounds of dried fish." Macamuck nodded. Fish were plentiful. "I want 2 sleds, one for me and one for my furs and fish. And my rifle must be returned to me. If you do not like the price, in a little while the price will grow." Yakaga whispered to the chief. "How can I know your medicine is true medicine?" Macamuck asked. "It is very easy. First I shall go into the woods." Again Yakaga whispered to Macamuck, who made a suspicious dissent. "You can send 20 hunters with me," Zubienko went on. "You see, I must get the berries and the roots with which to make the medicine. Then, when you have brought the 2 sleds and loaded on them the fish and the beaver skins and the rifle, and when you have told off the 6 hunters who will go with me, then, when all is ready, I will rub the medicine onto my neck, so, and lay my neck there on the log. Then can your strongest hunter take the axe and strike 3 times on my neck. You yourself can strike 3 times." Macamuck stood, gaping mouthed, drinking in this latest and most wonderful magic of the birthday. "But first," Paul added hastily, "between each blow I must put on fresh medicine. The axe is heavy and sharp, and I want no mistakes." "All that you ask shall be yours," Macamuck cried in a rush of acceptance. "Proceed to make your medicine." Zubienko concealed his elation. "You were playing a desperate game, and there must be no slips." He spoke arrogantly. "You have been slow. My medicine has offended. To make the offence clean, you must give me your daughter." He pointed to the girl, an unwholesome creature with a cast in one eye, a bristling wolf tooth. Macamuck was angry, and the Pole remained imperturbable, rolling and lighting another cigarette. "Taste," he threatened, If you are not quick, I shall demand yet more. In the silence that followed, the dreary northern scene faded from before him, and he saw once more his native land, France, and once as he glanced at the wolf-toothed girl, he remembered another girl, the singer who had danced, and he had known when it first as a youth became apparent. What do you want with the girl? Macklemore asked. To go down the river with me? Dibienko glanced her over critically. She will make a good wife, and it is an honour worthy of my medicine to be married to your blood. Again he remembered the singer and dancer, hummed aloud the song she had taught him. He lived the old life over, in an attached, impersonal sort of way, looking at the memory pictures of his own life as if they were pictures in a book of anybody's life. The chief's voice abruptly breaking the silence startled him. It shall be done. The girl shall go down the river with you. Be it understood that I myself strike 3 blows with the axe on your neck. Each time I shall put on the medicine, Dibienko answered with a show of ill-concealed anxiety. You shall put the medicine on between each blow. Here are the hunters who shall see you do not escape. Go into the forest and gather your medicine. Makamuk had been convinced of the worth of the medicine by the Pole's rapacity. Surely nothing less than the grandest of medicines could enable a man in the shadow of death to stand up and drive the old woman to bargain. Besides, whispered Ricardo on the pole, as his guard had disappeared among the spruce trees, when you have learned the medicine, you can easily destroy him. But how can I destroy him? His medicine will not let me destroy him. There will be some part where he is not rubbed the medicine, was Ricardo's reply. We will destroy him through that part. It may be his ears. Very well, we will thrust a spear in one ear and out the other. It may be his eye. Surely this medicine will be much too strong to rub on his eyes. The chief nodded. You are wise, Ricardo. If he possesses no other devil things, then we will destroy him. Dibienko did not waste time in gathering the ingredients for his medicine. He selected whatsoever came to hand, such as spruce needles, the inner bark of the willow, a strip of birch bark, and a quantity of moss berries, which he made the hunters dig up for him, beneath the snow. A few frozen roots completed his supply, and he led the way back to camp. Makamuk and Ricardo pressed beside him, noting the quantities and kinds of the ingredients he dropped into a pot of boiling water. You must be careful that the moss berries go in first, he explained. And, oh yes, one other thing. The finger of a man. Here, Ricardo, let me cut off your finger. But Ricardo put his hands behind him and scowled. Just a small finger, Dibienko pleaded. Ricardo, give him your finger, Makamuk commanded. There'll be plenty of fingers lying around, Ricardo grunted, indicating the human wreckage in the snow, a score of persons who'd been tortured to death. Must be the finger of a live man, the Pole objected. Then shall you have the finger of a live man? Ricardo strode over to a Cossack and sliced off a finger. He is not yet dead, he announced, flinging the bloody trophy in the snow at the Pole's feet. Also, it is a good finger, because it is large. Dibienko dropped it into the fire under the pot and began to sing. It was a French love song that with great solemnity he sang onto the brew. Without these words I enter into it, the medicine is worthless. The words of the chief is strengthened. Behold, it is ready. Name the words slowly that I may know them, Makamuk commanded. Not until after the test. When the axe flies back 3 times from my neck, then I will give you the secret of the words. But if the medicine is not good medicine, Makamuk queried anxiously. Dibienko turned upon him wrathfully. My medicine is always good. However, it is not good, then do by me as you have done to the others. Cut me up a bit at a time, even as you cut him up. The medicine is now cool. Thus I rub it on my neck, saying this further medicine. With great gravity, he slowly intoned a line of the Marseille, at the same time rubbing the villainous brew thoroughly into his neck. An outcry interrupted his play acting. The giant Cossack, with the last resurgence of its tremendous vitality, had arisen to his knees. Laughter and cries of surprise and applause arose from the Nalat. Big Ivan began flinging himself about in the snow with mighty spasms. Dibienko was made sick by the sight. He mastered his qualms and made believe to be angry. This will not do, so finish him, and then we will make the test. Here you, Ricardo. See that his noise ceases. While this was being done, Dibienko turned to Makamuk. And remember, you are to strike hard. It is not baby work. Here, take the axe and strike the log, so I can see you strike like a man. Makamuk obeyed, striking twice precisely and with vigour, cutting out a large chip. It is well. Dibienko looked about him at the circle of savage faces, that somehow seemed to symbolise the wall of savagery that hemmed him about ever since the Tsar's police had first arrested him in Warsaw. Take your axe, Makamuk, and stand so. I shall lie down. I'll raise my hand, strike, and strike with all your might. Be careful that no one stands behind you. The medicine is good, and the axe may bounce off from my neck and right out of your hand. He looked at the two sleds with the dogs in harness, loaded with furs and fish. His rifle lay on top of the beaver skin. The 6 hunters who were to act as his guard stood by the sleds. "Where's the girl?" Paul demanded. "Bring her up to the sleds before the test goes on." When this had been carried out, Zubienko lay down in the snow, resting his head on the log like a tired child about to sleep. He had lived so many dreary years that he was indeed tired. "I laugh at you and your strength, O Makamuk," he said. "Strike, and strike hard." He lifted his hand. Makamuk swung the axe, a broad axe, for the square in the logs. The bright steel flashed through the frosty air, poised for a perceptible instant above Makamuk's head, then descended upon Zubienko's bare neck. Clear through flesh and bone it cut away, its way, biting deeply into the log beneath. The amazed savages saw the head bounce a yard away from the blood-spouting trunk. There were a great bewilderment and silence, while slowly it began to dawn in their minds that there had been no medicine. The fur thief had outwitted them. Alone of all their prisoners, he had escaped the torture. That had been the stake for which he played. A great roar of laughter went up. Makamuk bowed his head in shame. The fur thief had fooled him. He had lost face before all his people. Still they continued to roar out their laughter. Makamuk turned and with bowed head stalked away. He knew that henceforth he would no longer be known as Makamuk. He would be Lost Face. The record of his shame would be with him until he died. Wherever the tribes gathered in the spring for the salmon or in the summer for the draping, the story will pass back and forth across the campfire. How the fur thief died peaceably, in a single stroke, by the hand of Lost Face. Who was Lost Face? He could hear in anticipation some insolent young buck demand. "Oh, Lost Face," would be the answer. He who once was Makamuk in the days before he cut off the fur thief's head. That's the end of Lost Face. That was quite a fun story. I mean, a little grim, especially in the details of it. I do love the trickery. Playing a game no one else knows you're playing, or at least playing the game for something no one realises you're playing for. A clever little trick. There's also a lot there about the sort of memory of the man, the things he had lost and the things he had done. Independence of Poland. I think I've been to Warsaw. And I think Poland is its own country nowadays, so perhaps it wasn't entirely in vain by his part. I don't know if they have a king or not. Still, it is interesting. He displays himself in the first to be a particular sort of man. A man willing and capable of fighting and doing rough things, both to survive and to do what he thinks is right. In his murdering a man for a passport and coin, in his proving himself to the fur thieves and the numerous fights and killings he's done, he's a man willing to fight very hard for his own survival. And it seems at the last, he's a man very willing to fight for his own death. Which, I mean, well, a noble enough cause to fight for, I suppose, if you have to. Anyhow, I don't think there's much more to be said on that. I'll have a quick drink. Oh no, there's one more thing to be said. Comparing, of course, my eternal theory on London as to the themes. We have no dogs and we have no gold. All that's left is the theme of transformation. And I would argue that it is present. It's not perhaps the most sort of obvious variation of this form, but we see a man transform from striving for life to striving for death. And indeed we see another sort of echo of, an echo of another London story we've read. In Love of Life, we see a man who is reduced almost to nothing, who still strives for life. But in there he is rescued, restored, and his suffering is sort of validated. As here we see Ivan, the big Cossack, reduced to nothing, clinging alive despite himself. And it's framed as a negative thing. I think changed by the lack of any availability of salvation. And so in that manner, we see the transformation from playing for life to playing for death in a man capable very much of both. Not much else to say, but yeah, I did like it. I appreciate a man who this colour. Wins his games through trickery. I especially appreciate a trick that good, where no one knows what was happening. What else? Not really, so let's move on to a relic of the Pliocine. Shall we? This one, yeah, relic of the Pliocine. Yeah. A relic of the Pliocine. I'll wash my hands of him at the start. I can't father his tales, nor will I be responsible for them. I make these preliminary reservations, observe as a guard upon my own integrity. I possess a certain definite position in a small way, also a wife, for the good name of the community that honours my existence with his approval, and for the sake of her posterity and mine, I cannot take the chance I once did, nor foster probabilities, with a careless improvidence to you. So I repeat, I wash my hands of him, this Nimrod, this mighty hunter, this only blue-eyed, freckle-faced Thomas Stevens. Having been honest myself, in whatever perspective olive branches my wife may be pleased to send me, I can now afford to be generous. I shall not criticise the tales told me by Thomas Stevens, and further I shall withhold my judgment. If it be asked why, I can only add that the judgment I have none. What? If it be asked why, I can only add that judgment I have none. Long have I pondered, weighed and balanced, but never have my conclusions been twice the same. Forsooth, because Thomas Stevens is a greater man than I. If he is told truths, well and good. If untruths, still well and good. For who can prove, or who disprove? I limit myself from the proposition. For those of little faith may do as I have done. Go find the said Thomas Stevens, and discuss to his face the various matters which, if fortune serve, I shall relate. As to where he may be found, the directions are simple. Anywhere between 53 north latitude and the pole, on the one hand, and on the other, the likeliest hunting grounds that lie between the east coast of Siberia and the farthermost Labrador. But he is there, somewhere, within that clearly defined territory. I pledge the word of an honourable man, whose expectations entail straight speaking and right living. Thomas Stevens may have toyed prodigiously with truth. When we first met, in well to mark this point, he wandered to my camp when I thought myself 1,000 miles beyond the outermost post of civilization. At the sight of his human face, the first in weary months, I could have sprung forward and folded in my arms. And I am not by any means a demonstrative man, but to him his visit seemed the most casual thing under the sun. He just strolled into the light of my camp, passed the time of day after the custom of men on beaten trails, threw my snowshoes, one way and a couple of dogs the other, and so made room for himself by the fire. Said he'd just dropped in to borrow a pinch of soda and see if I had any decent tobacco. He plucked forth an ancient pipe, loaded it with painstaking care, without as much as a by your leave, whacked half the tobacco in my pouch into his. Yes, the stuff was fairly good. He sighed with a contentment that just literally absorbed the smoke from the crisping yellow ducts. It did my smoker's art good to behold him. Hunter? Trapper? Prospector? He shrugged his shoulders. No, just sort of knocking around a bit. He come up from the Great Slave some time since, and was thinking of traipsing over the Yukon country. The factor at Kashim had spoken about the discoveries on the Klondike, and he were of a mind to run over for a peep. I noticed that he spoke of the Klondike in the archaic vernacular, calling it the Reindeer River, the conceited custom that the old-timers employ against the Chicacos, and old tenderfeet in general. But he did it so naively, in such a matter of the course, there were no sting, and I forgave him. He also had it in view, he said, before he crossed the divide of the Yukon, to make a little run up Fort Good Hope. Now, Fort of Good Hope is a far journey to the north, over and beyond the circle, a place where the feet of few men have trod. When a nondescript ragamuffin comes in out of the night, from nowhere in particular, to sit by one's fire and discourse and such, in terms of traipsing and a little run, it is fair time to rouse up and shake off the dream. Therefore I looked about me, saw the flies, and underneath the palm boughs spread with sleeping furs, saw the grub sacks, the camera, the frosty breaths of the dog circling on the edge of the light, and above all, a great streamer of the aurora bridging that zenith from southeast to northwest. I shivered. There is a magic in the northern night that steals on one like fevers from malarial marshes. You're clutched and down before you're aware. Then I looked at the snowshoes, lying prone and crossed where you've flung them. Also I had an eye on my tobacco pouch, half at least, with a goodly story of animals. That settled it. Fancy had not tricked me after all. Crazed with suffering, I thought, looking steadfastly at the man, one of these wild stampeders, very far from his bearing, and wandering like a lost soul through great vastness and unknown deeps. Ah well, let his mood slip on, until mayhap he gathers his tangled wits together. Who knows? The mere sound of a fellow creature's voice may bring all straight again. So I led him on and talked, and soon unmarveled. We talked the game and the ways thereof. He killed the Siberian wolf of westernmost Alaska, and the chamois of the secret Rockies. He already knew the haunts where the last buffalo still roamed. He had hung on the flanks of the caribou when they ran, they of the 100,000, and slept in the great barrens on the muskox's winter trail. And I shifted my judgment accordingly, reversed from this revision by no account to laugh, and deemed him a monumental effigy of truth. Why it was I know not, but the spirit moved me to repeat a tale told to me by a man who had dwelt in the land too long to know better. It was of the great bear, a huge great bear that hugs the steep slopes of St. Elias, never descending to the levels of the gentler incline. Now God so constituted this creature for a tillside habitat, the legs of one side are all of a foot longer than those of the other. This is mighty convenient, as can readily admit, so I entered this rare beast in my own name, told it in the first person, present tense, painting the requisite locale, gave it the necessary garnishings and touches of verisimilitude, and looked to see the man stunned by the recital. Not he. Had he doubted, I could have forgiven him, but he objected, denying the danger of such an hump by virtue of the animal's inability to turn about and go the other way. Had he done this, I say, I could have taken him by the hand for the true sportsman that he was. Not he. He sniffed, looked on me, sniffed again. Then he gave my tobacco due praise, thrust one foot in my lap, and bade me examine the gear. It were a muckalock of the Inuit pattern, two together with the sinew threads, and devoid of beads or fur below. It was the skin itself that was remarkable, in that it were all half an inch thick. It reminded me of walrus hide, but there the resemblance ceased, for no walrus ever bore so marvellous a growth of hair. On the side and ankles, the hair were well nigh worn away, what a friction with underbrush and snow. But around the top and down the more sheltered back, it was coarse, dirty black and very thick. I parted it with difficulty and looked beneath for the fine fur that is common in northern animals, but I found it in this case to be absent. This, however, was compensated for by the length. Indeed, the tusk that had survived wear and tear measured all of 7 or 8 inches. I looked up at the man's face, he pulled his foot down and asked, "Find I like that one on your St. Elias bear?" I shook my head. "Or any other creature of land or sea?" I answered candidly. The thickness of it, the length of the hair, puzzled me. "That," he said without the slightest hint of impressiveness, "that came from a mammoth." "Nonsense," I exclaimed, for I could not forbear the protest of my unbelief. A mammoth, my dear sir, long ago vanished from the earth. I know it once existed by the fossil remains that we have unearthed, and by a frozen carcass the Siberian sun saw fit to melt out from the bosom of a glacier. We also know that no living specimen exists. Our explorers, at this word he broke impatiently. "Your explorers, pish! A weakly breed. Let's hear no more of them. But tell me, O man, what you may know of the mammoth and his ways." Beyond contradiction, this would lead into a yarn, so I baited my oath by ransacking my memory for whatever data I possessed on the subject at hand. To begin with, I emphasized that the animal was prehistoric, and marshalled all my facts to support this. I mentioned the Siberian sandbars, abounded with ancient mammoth bones, spoke of the large quantities of fossil ivory purchased from the Inuits by the Alaska Commercial Company, and acknowledged having myself mined 6 and 8 foot tusks from the pay gravel of the Klondike creeks. All fossils, found in the midst of the debris deposited through countless ages. I remember when I were a kid, Father Stephen sniffed. He had a most confounding way of sniffing, but I saw a petrified watermelon. Hence, though mistaken persons sometimes delude themselves in thinking that they are really raising or eating them, there are no such thing as excellent watermelons. The question of food, I objected, ignoring his point, which were puerile and without bearing. The soil must bring forth vegetable life in lavish abundance to support so monstrous creation. Nowhere in the north is the soil so prolific. There go the Mammoth County exists. I pardon your ignorance concerning many matters of the north. You were a young man and have travelled little. At the same time, I am inclined to agree with you on one thing. The mammoth no longer exists. How do I know? I killed the last lot one with my own right arm. Thus spake Nimrod, the mighty hunter, after he threw a stick of firewood at the dogs and bade them quit their unholy howling and wait. Undoubtedly this liar, singular felicity, would open his mouth and requite me from us sent Elias bear. With this way, the last began, after appropriate silence and intervened. I was in camp one day. Where? I am not. He waved his hand vaguely in the direction of the northeast. I stretched a terra incognita in which vastness few men have strayed and fewer emerged. I was in camp one day with Klooch. Klooch ran handsome little gamooks as ever went wine betwixt the traces, or shoved nose in a camp kettle. My father were a full-blood Malmoot from Russian Poland, Hastilic, and Bering Sea. My brother, with understanding out of clean-legged bitch of the Hudson Basin. I tell you, man, she were a corker combination. And now on this day I have in mind, she were brought to pup through a pure wild wolf of the woods, grey and long a limb, with big lungs and no end of staying power. So, whether ever the like. They were a new breed of dog I had started, and I could look forward to the big thing. As I have said, she was brought neatly the pup, and safely delivered. I was squatting on my arms over the litter, 7 sturdily blind little beggars, and from behind came a bray of trumpets and a crash of brass. There were a rush like the wind squall that kicks the heels of the rain. I was midway to my feet, but knocked flat on my face. In the same instant I heard Klooch sigh, very much as a man does when you climb your fist in his belly. He'd state your sack, I lay quiet, but I twisted my head round and saw a huge bolt swaying above me. Then the blue sky flashed into view, and I got to my feet. A mountain of flesh was just disappearing in the underbrush at the edge of the open. I caught a rear-end glimpse with a stiff tail, as big and girth as my body, standing out straight behind me. The next second, only a tremendous hole remained in the thicket. I could still hear the sound as of a tornado flying quickly away, underbrush ripping and tearing, and trees snapping and crashing. I cast about for my rifle. It had been laying on the ground with the muzzle against the log, but now the stock was smacked. The barrel out of line and the working gear in 1,000 bits. Then I looked for the slot, and what do you suppose? Shook my head. Made my soul burn in 1,000 hells if there were anything left of her. Klooch, the 7 sturdy blind little beggars, gone, all gone. Where she had stretched was a slimy, bloody depression in the soft earth, all of 1 yard in diameter. Around the edge, a few scattered hairs. I measured 3 feet on the snow, threw about yet a circle, and glanced at Nimrod. These were 30 long and 20 high, he answered. His pus scaled over 6 times 3 feet. I couldn't believe myself at the time. For all that had just happened, if my sense had played me, there was a broken gun and the hole in the bush, and there were not, Klooch and all the pups. Oh man, you're all over now when I think of it. Klooch, another Eve, the mother of a new race. A rampaging, ranting old bull mammoth like a second flood wiping that root and branch off the face of the earth. You wonder that the blood-soaked earth cries out to our God, that I grabbed the hand axe and took the trail? A hand axe, I exclaimed, startled out of myself by the picture. The hand axe, a big bull mammoth, 30 feet long, 20 feet. Nimrod joined me in my merriment, chuckling gleefully. I'd kill you, he cried. Wasn't it a beaver's dream? That's the time I've thought about it since. I've laughed about it since. But at the time it was no laughing matter. I was that dang mad with a gun and Klooch. Think of it, I'm mad. Brand new, unclassified, uncopyrighted breed. And wiped out before I opened his eyes and took out his interim paper, intention paper. And so be it. I was full of disappointments and rightly so. Eat his best after a famine and a bed softer after an hard trail. As I was saying, I took out after the beast with the hand axe and hunted its heels down the valley. But where he circled back towards the end, I was left winded at the lower end. Speaking of grub, I might as well stop long enough to explain a couple of points. Up thereabouts, in the midst of the mountains, is an almighty curious formation. There is no end to little valley, each like the other, much as peas in a pond, and all neatly tucked away with straight rocky walls running on all sides. At the lower ends are always small openings, where the drainage or glaciers must have broken out. The only way in is through these mountains, and they're small, some smaller than others. As the grub, who slushed around on the rain-soaked islands of the Alaskan coast, down Sitka way most likely, seeing as you're a traveller. And you know how stuff grows there, big and juicy and jungly. That's the way it was with those valleys. Thick, rich soil with ferns and grass and such things in patches higher than you're in. Rain 3 days out of 4 during the summer months, and food in them for 1,000 mammals, to say nothing of small game for man. But to get back, down at the lower end of the valley I got winded and gave over. I began to speculate. When my wind left me, my dander got hotter and hotter. I knew I'd never know peace of mind till I'd dined on roasted mammoth. And I knew also that stood for a skook and mammoth pup. Excuse Chinook, I mean they were a big fuck coming. Now the mouth of my valley were very narrow and the wall was steep. High up on one side were one of those big river blocks, balancing on for some call it, weighing all of a couple 100 tons. Just think. I hit back for camp, keep an eye open so the ball couldn't slip past, and got my ammunition. It wasn't worth anything, with the rifle smashed. So I opened the shells, pumped the powder under the rock, and touched it off with a slow fuse. Not much of a charge, but the old boulder tipped up lazily and dropped down in the face. Just space enough to let the creek drain nicely. Now I had it. How did you have him? I queried. I've ever heard of a man killing a mammoth with an hand axe, for that matter with anything else. Oh man, have I not told you I was mad? Rob replied, with a slight manifestation of sensitiveness. Mad clean through, a klooch and a gun. Also, was I not an hunter? Was this not your most unusual game? An hand axe? It shuddered from me. Listen, you shall hear of a hunt that might have happened to the youth of the world. Cavemen ran but to kill with hand axes and stone. Touch would have served me as well. Now, is it not a fact that man can outwalk the dog of the horse? They can wear them out with the intelligence and the endurance. I nodded. Well, the light broke in on me and I bade him continue. My valley were perhaps 5 miles round. The mouths were closed. There were nowhere to get out. A timid beast with that poor mammoth, and I had him at my mercy. I got on his heels again, hollered like a fiend, pelted him with cobbles, and raced him round the valley 3 times before I knocked off supper. Don't you see? A race course. A man and mammoth. An hippodrome with the sun and moon and stars to referee. It took me 2 months to do it, but I did it. And that's no beaver dream. Round and round I ran him, me travelling on the inner circle, eating sharp meat and salmon berries on the run, and snatching winks of sleep between. Of course he'd get desperate at times and turn. Then I'd heard for soft ground where the creek spread out, and lay anathema upon him and his ancestry, and dare him to come. We were too wise to bog in a mud puddle. Once he pinned me in against the walls, I crawled back into a deep crevice and waited. Whenever he felt for me with his trunk, I'd belt him with the hand axe till he pulled out, shrieking fit to splinter my eardrums. We were that mad. He knew he had me and didn't have me, and it near drove him wild. But he were no man's fool. He knew we were safe as long as I stayed in the crevice, and he made up his mind to keep me there. They were dead right, and he hadn't figured out the commissary. There were neither grub nor water around that spot, so on the face of it he couldn't keep up the siege. He'd stand before the opening for hours, keeping an eye on me, flapping mosquitoes away with his big blanket ears. Then the thirst would come on him, and he'd ramp round and roar till the earth shook, calling me every name he could lay tongue to. This was to frighten me, of course, and when he thought I was sufficiently impressed, he'd back away softly, try and make a sneak for the creek. Sometimes I'd let him get almost there, only a couple 100 yards away it was, and I'd pop out and back, and back he'd come, lumbering along like old landslide he was. After I'd done this a few times, and he'd figured it out, he changed his tactics. Grasped the time over the sea. Without a word of warning, away he'd go, tearing at the water like mad, scheming to get there and back before I ran away. Finally, after cursing me most horribly, he arranged the siege, deliberately stalked off to the water hole. That was the only time he penned me, 3 days of it. After that, the hippodrome never stopped. Round and round and round, like a 6-day go as I pleased, for he never pleased. My clothes went to rags and tatters, but I never stopped to mend until at last I ran naked as the son of the earth, with nothing but the old hand axe in one hand, a cobble in the other. But I never stopped, save for peeps asleep, the crannies and ledges of the cliff. As for the bull, he got perceptibly thinner and thinner. Must have lost several tons at least, and as nervous as a schoolmarm on the wrong side of matrimony. I'd come up with him and yell, or land him with a rock at long range. He'd jump like a skittish colt, and tremble all over. And he'd pull out on the run, tail and trunk waving stiff, head over one shoulder and wicked eyes blazing. And the way he'd swear at me was something dreadful. The most immoral beast he was, a murderer and a blasphemer. Towards the end he quit all this, further whimpering and crying like a baby. His spirit broke and he became a quivering jelly at mountain of misery. You get attacks of palpitation of the heart, stagger around like a drunken man, fall down and bark and shit. Then he'd cry, but always on the run. Oh man, the gods themselves would have wept for him. And you yourself or any other man. You were pitiful. There was so much of it. I only hardened my heart and hit him up the pace. At last I wore him clean out, and he lay down, broken-winded, broken-hearted, hungry and thirsty. When I found he wouldn't budge, I hamstrung him, spent the better part of the day wading into it with the hand axe, ears sniffing and sobbing till I walked in far enough to shut him off. 30 feet long he was, 20 high. A man could sling an hammock between his tusks and sleep comfortably. Barring the fact that I had run most of the juices out of him, we were fair eaten, and his 4 feet alone roasted old would have lost a man of 12 men. I spent the winter there myself. Where is this valley? I asked. He waved his hand in the direction of the northeast and said, Your tobacco is very good. I carry a fair share of it in my pouch, but I shall carry the recollection of it until I die. Token my appreciation. In return for the moccasins on your own feet, I will present you these mucklucks. They commemorate Klooch and the 7 blind little beggars. They are also souvenirs of an unparalleled event in history, namely the destruction of the oldest breed of animal on earth, and the youngest, and their chief virtue lies in that they will never wear out. And effected the exchange, he knocked the ashes from his pipe, gripped my hand good night, and wandered off through the snow. Concerning this tale, for which I have already disclaimed responsibility, I would recommend those of little faith to make a visit to the Smithsonian Institute. If they bring the requisite credentials and do not come in vacation time, they will undoubtedly gain an audience with Professor Dolfredson. The mucklucks are in his possession, and he will verify, not the manner in which they are obtained, but the material of which they are composed. When he states that I am made from the skin of the mammoth, the scientific world accepts it. What more would you add? And that's the end of the Relic of the Pliocine. That's an old one. Let's run through the Jack London checklist while I'm thinking it over. Well, we've got dogs. I'll open it briefly. We have transformation. Not real. I mean, we have endo, really, rather than transformation, which I guess is a type of transformation. The undoing of a thing. That doesn't really come across. We don't have gold, but we do have the Klondike, which is a favourite place it is. Nah. What else of it? I don't know really. It sort of comes across to me as like a tale. This outlandish figure who claims to have killed a mammoth, such and such. It tries to be quite odd really, because he himself gives an explanation that would kind of explain the existence of these mammoth-eyed mucklucks, and that there's frozen mammoths that have been thawed by time. Presumably if they was preserved well enough, you could make a pair of moccasins out of them, or mucklucks, or whatever you chose. Still, it makes for a good story. It's true, humans have a terrible amount of endurance in them compared to most animals. I know I can't run that long. Oh Lord, a man running for months at a time does strike me a bit much. I don't know. I don't think there's a whole lot to this, really. It's enough at the tail, but it comes across much as a fabulous story as most of his others. Still, nothing wrong with it. Didn't enjoy it as much as Lost Face, because there's no straight trickery, but it's a fun enough tall tale, and the character of the hunter, whose name I've already forgotten, tries to be quite entertaining. Anyway, I'll have a little water now. I'm not going quite as strong as I was yesterday. The lamp still promised me my little lozenges, but I do want to push on at least a little longer. I've decided that I'm trying for at least 2 hours. Maybe more. I don't know. Where we're going, I suppose that we'll get 2.5 hours at the Londons. And then depending on how I feel, I might tackle the Hemingway or I might not. It's quite a long one, the Hemingway. Not incredibly long, but fairly long. Properly. Water is hot today. I don't know why. It just is. I have such little control over it. Right, now where are we? The Heathen is next. I suppose we should get to it. unless there's someone to make an objection. The Heathen. I met him first in an hurricane. Though we had gone through the hurricane on the same schooner, it was not until the schooner had gone to pieces under us I first laid eyes on him. Without doubt I had seen him with the rest of the Kanaka crew on board, but I had not consciously been aware of his existence. For the Pliocine were rather overcrowded. In addition to her 8 or 10 Kanaka seamen, a white captain, mate, supercargo, and 6 cabin passengers, she sailed from Rangiroa, something like 85 deck passengers, palm mountains and Tahitians, men, women and children from the trade box, to say nothing of sleeping mats, blankets and cloth bundles. The Poland season in the Palmotus was over, and all hands were returned to Tahiti. The 6 of us cabin passengers were Pearl buyers. 2 were American, one was our tune, the whitest Chinese I've ever known, one was a German, one was a Polish Jew, and I completed the half dozen. It had been a prosperous season. Not one of us had cause for complaint, not one of the 85 deck passengers either. All done well, and all were looking forward to a rest-off and a good time in Papeete. Of course, the Petty Jean were overloaded. She were only 70 tons, and she had no right to carry a tithe of the mob she had on board. Beneath her, hatches were crammed and jammed with pearl shell and copra. Even the trade room was packed full with shell. It were a miracle that sailors could work there. There were no moving about the deck. They simply climbed back and forth along the rails. In the night time they walked upon the sleepers, the carpeted deck, I swear, 2 deep. Oh, and there were pigs and chickens on deck, sacks of yams, while every conceivable place was festooned with strings of drinking coconuts, bunches of bananas. On both sides, between the fore and main shrouds, guys had been stretched just low enough for the foreboom to swing clear, and from each of these guys at least 50 bunches of bananas were suspended. It promised to be a messy passage, even if we did make it in the 2 or 3 days that would have been required if the southeast trades had been blowing fresh. But they weren't blowing fresh. After the first 5 hours, the trade died away in a dozen or so gasping flames. The calm continued all that night and the next day, one of those glaring, glassy calms, and the very thought of opening one's eyes to look at it is sufficient to cause a headache. The second day, a man died, an Easter Islander, one of the best divers that season in the lagoon. Smallpox, that is what it was. Well, that is what it was. Though how smallpox could come on board when there had been no known case ashore, we left Rangiroa is beyond me. There it was though, smallpox, a man dead, and 3 others down on their backs. They were not going to be dumb. We could not segregate the sick, nor could we care for them. We were packed like sardines. There were nothing to do but rot and die. That means there were nothing to do after the first night that followed the first death. On that night, the mate, the supercargo, the Polish Jew, and the 4 native divers sneaked away in the large whale boat. They were never heard of again. In the morning, the captain promptly scuttled the remaining boats. And there we were. That day, there were 2 deaths. The following day, 3. Then it jumped to 8. You were curious to see how we took it. The natives, for instance, were in a condition of dumb, stolid fear. The captain, Odious, his name was, a Frenchman, became very nervous and voluble. He actually got the twitches. He was a large, fleshy man weighing at least 200 pounds, and he quickly became a faithful representation of a quivering jelly mountain of fat. The German, the 2 Americans and myself, brought up all the Scotch whisky and proceeded to stay drunk. The theory was beautiful. Namely, if we kept ourselves soaked in alcohol, every smallpox germ that came into contact with us would immediately be scorched to a cinder. And the theory worked. I must confess that neither Captain nor Odious nor our tune were attacked by the disease either. The Frenchman did not drink at all, while our tune restricted himself to 1 drink daily. It was a pretty time. The sun, going in a northern decline, was straight overhead. There was no wind except for frequent squalls, which blew fiercely for the 5 minutes to half hour, and wound up by deluging us with rain. After each squall, the awful sun would come out, drawing clouds of steam from the soaked deck. The steam was not nice, but the vapour of death, freighted with millions and millions of germs. We always took another drink when we saw it going up from the dead and dying, and usually we took 2 or 3 more drinks, mixing them exceptionally stiff. Also, we made it a rule to take an additional several each time they hove the dead over the sharks that swarmed about us. We had a week of it, and then the whisky gave out. As well, I shouldn't be alarmed now. With a sober man to pull through one followed, as you'll agree, I mentioned the little fact that only 2 men did fall through. The other man was the Heathen. At last, that was what I heard Captain Ogius call him at the moment I first became aware of the Heathen's existence. But to come back, we were at the end of the week, with the whiskey gone and the pearl buyers sober. I happened to glance at the barometer hung in the cabin companion. Its normal register in the promoters was 29.99, and it was quite customary to see it vacillate between 29.85 and 30, or even 30.05. But as I saw it, down to 29.62, was sufficient to sober the most drunken pearl buyer that ever incinerated smallpox, microbes, and Scotch whisky. I called Captain Ogius' attention to it, only to be informed that he had watched it going down for several hours. There were little to do, but little he did very well, considering the circumstances. He took off the light sails, shortened right down the storm canvas, spread lifelines, and waited for the wind. His mistake lay in what he did after the wind came. He hove to on the port tack, which was the right thing to do south of the equator, if one were not in the direct path of the hurricane. We were in the direct path. I could see that with the steady increase of the wind and the equally steady fall of the barometer. I wanted him to turn and run with the wind on the port quarter until the barometer ceased falling, and then the reef do. He argued till he reduced to hysteria, but Budgie would not. The worst of it was that I could not get the rest of the pearl bars to back me up. Who was I, anyway, to know more about the sea, its ways, than a properly qualified captain? What was in their mind? What was in their minds, I knew. Of course, the sea rose with the wind, frightfully, and I shall never forget the first 3 seas, the Pliocine ship. She had fallen off, as vessels do at times when hove to, and the first sea made a clean breach. The lifelines were only for the strong and well, and a little good where they were, even for them when the women and children, the bananas and coconuts, the pigs and trade boxes, the sick and dying were swept along in a solid screeching, groaning mass. The second sea filled the Pliocine's jacks flush with the rails, and as her stern sank down and her bow tossed skywards, all the miserable dunnage of life and luggage poured aft. It was a human torment. They came head first, feet first, slidewise, rolling over and over, twisting, squirming, writhing, and crumpling up. Now and again, one caught a grip on a stanchion or rope. The weight of the bodies behind them, the iron tore such grip loose. One man I noticed fetch up, head on and square on with a starboard bit. His head cracked like an egg. I saw what were coming, sprang on top of the cabin, and from there into the mainsail itself. Atune and one of the Americans tried to follow me. I was one jump ahead of them. The American was swept away and over the stern like a piece of chaff. Atune caught a spoke of the wheel and swung in behind it. A strapping Rarotonga Vane woman, she must have weighed 250, brought up against him, and he got an arm around his neck. He clutched at the Kanaka steersman with his other hand, and just at that moment the schooner flung down a starboard. The rush of bodies in the sea that were coming along the port runway between the cabin and the rail turned abrupt and poured to starboard. Away they went, Vane, Atune, and the steersman. I swear I saw Atune grin at me with a philosophic resignation as he cleared the rail and went under. The third sea, biggest of the 3, did not do so much damage. By the time it arrived, nearly everybody were in the rigging. On deck, perhaps a dozen gasping, half-drowned and half-stunned wretches were rolling about, relenting to crawl into safety. They went by the board, as did the wreckage of the 2 remaining boats. The other pearl buyers and myself, between seas, managed to get about 15 women and children into the cabin and batten down. Little did it good to poor creatures in the end. Wind? Out of all my experience, I could not believe it possible for the wind to blow as it did. There was no describing it. How can one describe a nightmare? We're the same way with that wind. It tore the clothes off our bodies. I say tore them off, and I mean it. I am not asking you to believe it. I am merely telling you something I saw and felt. There are times when I do not believe it myself. I went through it, that is enough. One could not face that wind and live. It were a monstrous thing. The most monstrous thing about it was that it increased and continued to increase. Imagine countless millions and billions of tons of sand. Imagine this sand tearing along at 90, 100, 120, or any other number of miles an hour. Imagine further this sand to be invisible, impalpable, yet to retain all the weight and density of sand. Do all this, and you may get a vague inkling of what that wind will like. Perhaps sand is not the right comparison. Consider it mud, invisible, palpable, but heavy as mud. And it goes beyond that. Consider every molecule of air to be a mud bank in itself. And try to imagine the multitudinous impacts of mud banks, is beyond me. Language may be adequate to express the ordinary conditions of life. It cannot possibly express any other condition as so enormous a blast of wind. It would have been better had I stuck by my original intention of not attempting a description. I will say this much of the sea. The sea, which had risen at first, was beaten down by the wind. More it seemed as if the whole ocean had been sucked up in the maw of the hurricane, and hurled on through the portion of space which previously had been occupied by the air. Of course, our canvas had gone long before, but Captain Odious had on the Pliocine something I had never before seen in a South Sea schooner, a sea anchor. It were a conical canvas bag, the mouth of which was kept open by a huge loop of iron. The sea anchor was bridled something like a kite, so that it bit in the water as a kite bites into the air, with a difference. The sea anchor remained just under the surface of the ocean, in a perpendicular position. A long line and turn connected it with the schooner. As a result, the Pliocine rode bow on with the wind, and of what little sea there was. The situation really would have been favourable if we had not been in the path of the storm. True, the wind itself tore our canvas out of the gaskets, jerked out our topmast, and made a raffle of our running gear, but still we would have come through nicely had we not been square in front of the advancing storm centre. That was what fixed us. I was in a state of stunned, numbed, paralysed collapse from enduring the impact of the wind, and I think I was just about ready to give up and die when the centre smote us. The blow we received was an absolute lull, but not a breath of air. The effect on one was sickening. Remember that for hours we had been at terrific muscular tensions, withstanding the awful pressure of that wind, and then suddenly the pressure was removed. I know I felt as if I were about to expand, fly apart in all directions. It seemed as if every atom composing my body was repelling every other atom, and were on the verge of rushing off irresponsibly into space. But that lasted only for a moment. Destruction were upon us. In the absence of the wind and pressure, the sea rose. It jumped, it leaped, it soared straight up towards the clouds. Remember, from every point of the compass, that inconceivable wind was blowing in towards the centre of the calm. The result was that the sea sprang up from every point of the compass. There were no wind to check them. They popped up like corks released from the bottom of a pail of water. There were no system to them, no stability. They were hollow, maniacal seas. They were 80 feet at the least. They were not seas at all. They resembled no sea a man had ever seen. There were splashes, monstrous splashes, that is all. Splashes that were 80 feet high. 80! They were more than 80. Went over our masthead. There were spouts, explosions. They were drunken. They fell anywhere, anyhow. Jostled one another, they collided. They rushed together and collapsed upon one another, or fell apart like 1,000 waterfalls all at once. And no ocean any man had ever dreamed of, at Hurricane Centre. The confusion thrice confounded. They were anarchy. It was an hell pit of seawater gone mad. And Pliocine? Heathen told me afterwards that he did not know. She was literally torn apart, wide open, beaten into a pulp, smashed into kindling wood, annihilated. When I came to her in the water, swimming automatically, I was about 2/3 drowned. How I got there I have no recollection. I remembered seeing the Pliocine fly to pieces, and what must have been the instant my own consciousness was buffeted out of me. But there I was, with nothing to do but make the best of it, and in that best there were a little promise. The wind were blowing again, the sea were much smaller and more regular, and I knew that I had passed through the centre. Fortunately there were no sharks about. The hurricane had dissipated the ravenous oil that surrounded the death ship and fed off the dead. We were about midday when the Pliocine went to pieces, and it must have been 2 hours afterwards when I picked up with one of the hatch covers. Thick rain were driving at the time, and with the merest chance they flung me and the hatch cover together. A short length of line were trailing from the rope handle, and I knew that I was good for a day at least if the sharks did not return. 3 hours later, possibly a little longer, sticking close to the cover, and with closed eyes, concentrating my whole soul upon the task of breathing in enough air to keep me going, at the same time, of avoiding breathing enough water to drown me. It seemed to me that I heard voices. The rain had ceased, and wind and sea were breezing marvellously. Not 20 feet away from me, on another hatch cover, were Captain Odious and the Heathen. They were fighting over the possession of the cover, at least the Frenchman was. "En noir!" I heard him scream. At the same time I saw him kick the canal. Now Captain Odious had lost all his clothes, except his shoes, and they were heavy broken. They were a cruel blow. caught the Heathen on the mouth, and the point of his chin, half stunning him. I looked for him to retaliate, but he contented himself with swimming around forlornly a safe 10 feet away. Whenever a fling of the sea threw him closer, the Frenchman, hanging on with his hands, kicked out at him with both. Also, at the moment of delivering each kick, he called the Kanaka a black Heathen. The 2 centimes I'd come over there and drown you, you white beast, I yelled. The only reason I did not go was that I felt too tired. The very thought of the effort to swim was over would nauseate him. So I called the Kanaka to come to me and proceeded to share the hatch cover with him. Otu, he told me his name was. And that's Otu. And he told me that he was a native of Bora Bora, most westerly of the society group. As I learned afterwards, he got the hatch cover first, and after some time encountering Captain Odious, I offered to share it with him and be kicked off from his pains. And that was how Ottawa and I first came together. He were no fighter, and he were all sweetness and gentleness, a lovely creature. He stood nearly 6 feet tall and were muscled like a gladiator. He were no fighter, he were also no coward. He had the heart of a lion, and in the years that followed I have seen him run risks I would never dream of taking. What I mean is that while he was no fighter, and while he always avoided precipitating a row, he never ran away from the trouble where it started. And it was where Shoal, when once Ottawa went into action. I shall never forget what he did to Bill King. It occurred in German Samoa. Bill King was hailed the champion heavyweight of the American Navy. He was a big brute of a man, a veritable gorilla, one of those ardent, roughhousing chaps, and clever with his fist as well. He picked the quarrel, and he kicked Ottawa twice, and struck him once before Ottawa felt it to be necessary to fight. I don't think it lasted 4 minutes, at the end of which time Bill King was the unhappy possessor of 4 broken ribs, a broken forearm, and a dislocated shoulder blade. Ottawa knew nothing of scientific boxing. He was merely a manhandler. Bill King was something like 3 months in recovery from the bit of manhandling he received the afternoon on Apia Beach. But I'm running ahead of my arm. We shared the hatch cover between us. We took turns and turn about, one lying flat on the cover and resting, while the other submerged to the neck, merely held on with his hands. For 2 days and nights, spell after spell on the cover and in the water, we drifted over the ocean. Towards the last I was delirious most of the time, and there were times too when I heard Ottawa babbling and raving in his native tongue. Our continuous immersion prevented us from dying of thirst, though the seawater and the sunshine gave us the prettiest imaginable combination of salt thick and sunburn. In the end, Ottawa saved my life, for I came to lying on a beach 20 feet from the water, sheltered from the sun by a couple of coconut leaves. No one but Ottawa could have dragged me there and stuck up the leaves for shade. You were lying beside me. I went off again, and the next time I came round it was a cool and starry night, and Ottawa was pressing a drinking coconut to my lips. We were the sole survivors of the collision. Captain Odious must have succumbed to exhaustion. Several days later, his hatch cover drifted ashore without him. Ottawa and I lived with the natives of the atoll for a week, and we were rescued by a French cruiser and taken to Heathen. In the meantime, however, we performed the ceremony of exchanging names. In the South Seas, such a ceremony binds 2 men closer than blood brothers should. The initiative had been mine, and Ottawa were rapturously delighted when I suggested it. "Me as well," he said to Heathen. "We have been mates together for 2 days on the lips of death." Death started this time. "It was a brave deed you did, master," he replied. "Death were not vile enough to speak." "Why do you have to master me?" I demanded with a shot of earth. "We have exchanged names. To you I am Ottawa. To me, you are Charlie. Between you and me, forever and forever, you shall be Charlie and I shall be Ottawa. This is the way of the custom. And when we die, if it does happen, and we live again somewhere beyond the stars and the sky, still shall you be Charlie to me, and I Ottawa to you." "Yes, master," he answered, his eyes luminous and soft with joy. "There you go," I cried. "What does it matter what my lips are thinking? They are only my lips. But I shall think Ottawa, always. Whenever I think of myself, I shall think of you. Whenever men call me by name, I shall think of you. And beyond the sky and beyond the stars, always and forever, you shall be Ottawa. Is it well, master?" I hid my smile and answered that it was well. We parted at Tahiti. I remained ashore to recuperate, and he went out in a cutter to his own island, Bora Bora. 6 weeks later, he was back. I was surprised, for he had told me of his wife, and said he was returning to her. Over sailing on far voyages. "Where do you go, master?" he asked, after our first greeting. I shrugged my shoulders. It was an odd question. "All the world," was my answer. "All the world, all the sea, and all the islands that are in the sea." "I will go with you," said simply. "My wife is dead." I never had a brother. From what I have seen of other men's brothers, I doubt any man ever had a brother that was to him what Ottawa would to me. We were a brother and father and mother as well. And this I know. I lived as a straighter and better man because of Ottawa. I cared little for other men, but I had to live straight in Ottawa's eyes. Because of him, I dared not tarnish myself. He made me his ideal, pounding me, I fear, chiefly out of his own love and worship. And there were times when I stood close to the step of the pictured hell, and would have taken the plunge had not the thought of Ottawa restrained me. His pride in me entered into me, until it became one of the major rules of my personal code to do nothing that would diminish that pride of his. Naturally, I did not learn right away what his feelings were towards me. He never criticised, never censured. Slowly, the exalted place I held in his eyes dawned upon me. And slowly, I grew to comprehend the hurt I could inflict upon him by being anything less than my best. For 17 years we were together. For years he was at my shoulder, watching while I slept, nursing me through fever and wounds, and receiving wounds and fighting for me. He signed on the same ships with me, and together we ranged the Pacific from Hawaii to Sydney Head, from the Torres Strait to the Galapagos. We blackbirded from the New Hebrides to the Lion Islands, over the westward clear, through the Louisiades, New Britain, New Ireland, New Hanover. We were wrecked 3 times, in the Gilberts, in the Santa Cruz group, and in the Fijis. And we traded and slaved wherever a dollar promised in the way of pearl and pearl shell, copra, bêche de mer, or killed turtle shell and stranded wrecks. It began in Papeete, immediately after his announcement that he was going with me over all the sea, the islands and the mid-sterile. There were a club in those days at Papeete, where the pearlers, traders, captain and riff-raff of the South Sea adventurers forgathered. The play ran high, and the drink ran high. I'm very much afraid that I kept later hours than would become on proper. No matter what the hour was when I left the club, there was Ottawa, waiting to see me safely home. At first I smiled, next I chided him, then I told him flatly that I stood in need of no wetness. After that I did not see him when I came out of the club. Quite by accident, a week or so later, I discovered that he still saw me at home, lurking across the streets among the shadows of the mango trees. What could I do? I knew what I did do. Insensibly I began to keep better hours. On wet and stormy nights, in the thick of the folly and the fun, the thought would persist in coming to me of Ottawa, keeping his dreary vigil under the dripping mangoes. Truly, he made a better man of me. He were not straight-laced, and he knew nothing of common Christian morality. Of all the people on Bora Bora were Christian, he was an heathen, the only one unbeliever on the island, a gross materialist, who believed that when he died he was dead. He believed merely in fair play and square dealing. Petty meanness in his code were almost as serious as wanton homicide, and I do believe that he respected a murderer more than a man given the small practices. Concerning me personally, he objected to my doing anything that was hurtful to me. Gambling was all right. He were an ardent gambler himself. The late hours, he explained, were bad for one's health. He had seen men who did not take care of themselves die of fever. He were no teetotaler and welcome to stiff nip at any time when it was wet work in the boats. On the other hand, he believed in liquor in moderation. He had seen many a man killed or disgraced by square face or scotch. Although I had my welfare always at heart, he thought ahead for me, weighed my plans and took a greater interest in them than I did myself. At first, when I were unaware of this interest of his in my affairs, he had to divine my intentions, as for instance at Papeete when I contemplated going partners with a knavish fellow countryman on a guano venture. I did not know he was a knave, nor did any white man in Papeete. Neither did Ottawa know, but he saw how thick we were getting, and found out for me, without my asking him. Native sailors from the end of the seas knocked about on the beach in Tahiti, and Ottawa, suspicious merely, went among them till he had gathered sufficient data to justify his suspicions. Oh, it were a nice history, that of Randolph Walton's. I couldn't believe it when Ottawa first narrated it. When I sheeted it home to Waters, he gave him with a murmur and got away on the first steamer to Auckland. First, I am free to confess, I couldn't help resenting Ottawa was poking his nose into my business. I knew that he were wholly unselfish, and soon I had to acknowledge his wisdom and discretion. He had his eyes open always to my main chance, and they were both keen-sighted and far-sighted. In time he became my counsellor, until he knew more of my business than I did myself. He really had my interest at heart more than I did. Mine were the magnificent carelessness of youth, for I preferred romance to dollars, and ventured a comfortable villa with all night in it. So it was well that I had someone to look out for me. I know that if it had not been for Ottawa, I should not be here today. In numerous instances, let me give one time. I had some experience in blackbirding before I went pearling in the Potomac. Ottawa and I were on the beach in Samoa. We really were on the beach, in harder ground, and my chance came to go as a recruiter on a blackbird brig. Ottawa signed on before the mast. For the next half dozen years, in as many ships, we knocked about the wildest portions of Melanesia. Ottawa saw to it that he always pulled stroke or in my boat. Our custom in recruiting labour was to land the recruiters on the beach. The cowering boat always lay on its oars several hundred feet offshore, while the recruiter's boat, also lying on its oars, kept afloat on the edge of the beach. When I landed with my trade goods, leaving my steer and sweeper peak, Ottawa left his stroke position and came into the stern sheets, where a Winchester lay ready to hand under the flap of canvas. The boat's crew were also armed, the snides concealed under canvas flaps, that ran the length of the gunwales. While I was busy arguing and persuading the woolly-headed cannibals to come into labour on the Queensland plantations, Ottawa kept watch, and often his low voice warned me of his suspicious actions and impending treachery. Sometimes it was a quick shot from his rifle, knocking a nigger over that was the first warning I received. Then my rush to the boat, his hand were always there to jerk me flying aboard. Once I remember, St. Anna, the boat grounded just as the trouble began. The covering boat were dashing to our assistance, but the several score of savages would have wiped us out before it arrived. Ottawa took a flying leap ashore, dug both hands into the trade goods and stacked tobacco, beads, tomahawks, knives, and calicos in all directions. This was too much for the woollyheads. They scrambled for the treasures, the boat was shoved clear, and we were aboard and 40 feet away. I got 30 recruits off that very beach in the next 4 hours. The particular instance I have in mind was on Malaysia, the most savage island in the Easterly Solomons. The natives had been remarkably friendly, and how were we to know that the old village had been taken up a collection for over 2 years with which to buy a white man's head? The beggars are all headhunters, and they especially esteem a white man's head. The fellow who captured the head would receive the old collection. As I say, they appeared very friendly, and on this day I was fully 100 yards down the beach from the boat. Ottawa had cautioned me, and as usual, when I did not heed him, I came to grief. The first I knew, a cloud of spears sailed out of the mangrove swamp at me. At least a dozen were sticking into me. I started to run, but tripped over one that was fast in my calf and went down. The woollyheads made a run for me, each with a long-handled fan-tailed tomahawk, which whack off my head. They were so eager for the prize, they got in one another's way. In the confusion, I avoided several acts by throwing myself right and left on the sand. Then Ottawa arrived. Ottawa the manhandler. In some way, he'd got hold of a heavy war club, and at close quarters it was a far more efficient weapon than a rifle. He was right in the thick of them, so they could not spear him, and the tomahawk seemed worse than useless. They were fighting for me, and they were in a true berserker rage. The way he handled that club were amazing. Their souls squashed like overripe oranges. It was not until he had driven them back, picked me up in his arms and started to run, that he received his first wound. He arrived in the boat with 4 spear thrusts, got his Winchester, and with it got a man on every shot. And we pulled aboard the schooner and docked it up. 17 years we were together. He made me. I should today be a supercargo, a recruiter or a memory if it had not been for him. You spend your money and you go out and get more, he said one day. It's easy to get money now. When you get old, your money will be spent, and you will not be able to go out and get more. I know, master. I have studied the way of the white man. On the beaches are many old men who were young once, and who could get money just like you. Now they are old, and they have nothing, and they wait about for the young men like you to come ashore and buy drinks. The black boy is a slave on the plantations. He gets $20 a year. He works hard. The overseer does not work hard. He rides a horse and watches the black boy work. He gets $1,200 a year. I am a sailor on the schooner. I get $15 a month. That's because I'm a good sailor. I work hard. The captain has a double awning and drinks beer out of long bottles. I have never seen him haul a rope or pull an oar. He gets $150 a month. I am a sailor. He is a navigator. Master, I think it would be very good for you to know navigation. Ottawa spurred me onto it. He sailed with me as second mate on my first schooner. They were far prouder of my command than I was myself. Later on it was, Captain is well paid, master. The ship in his keeping, and he is never free from the burden. It is the owner who is better paying. The owner who sits ashore with many servants and turns his money over. True, but a schooner costs $5,000. An old schooner at that, I objected. I should be an old man before I save $5,000. There'd be short ways for white men to make money, he went on, pointing ashore at the coconut-fringed beach. We were in the Solomons at the time, picking up cargo of ivory nuts along the east coast of Guadalcanal. Between this river mouth and the next, it is 2 miles, he said. The flat land runs far back. It is worth nothing now. Next year, who knows? Or the year after, and then we'll pay much money for that land. The anchorage is good. Big steamers can lie on the coast. You can buy the land 4 miles deep from the old chief for 10,000 sticks of tobacco, 10 bottles of Squareface, and a Snyder, which will cost you maybe $100. Then you place the deed with the commissioner, and the next year or the year after, you sell and become the owner of the ship. I followed his lead. His word came true. There were 3 years instead of 2. Next came the grasslands deal on Guadalcanal, 20,000 acres on a governmental 999-year lease at a nominal sum. I owned the lease for precisely 90 days when I sold it to a company for half a fortune. Always it was Ottawa who looked ahead and saw the opportunity. You were responsible for the savaging of the Doncaster, bought it at an auction for £100 and cleaning 3,000 after every expense was paid. You led me into the Savay plantation and the cocoa venture in Apollo. We did not go seafaring so much as in the old days. I was too well off. I married and my standard of living rose, but Ottawa remained the same odd time. Ottawa, moving about the house or trailing through the office, his wooden pipe in his mouth, a shilling undershirt on his back, and 4 shilling lava about his loins. I could not get him to spend money. There was no way of repaying him except with love. God knew he got that in full measure from all of us. The children worshipped him, and if he had been spoilable, my wife would surely have been his undoing. The children! He really was the one who showed them the way of their feet in the world practically. He began by teaching them to walk. He sat up with them when they were sick. One by one, when they were scarcely toddlers, he took them down the lagoon and made them into amphibians. He taught them more than I ever knew of the habit of fish and the ways to catch them. In the bush, it was the same thing. At 7, Tom knew more woodcraft than I ever dreamed existed. At 6, Mary went over the sliding rock without a quiver, and I've seen more strong men balk at that feat. And when Frank had just turned 6, he could bring up shillings from the bottom in 3 fathoms. My people in Bora Bora do not like Heathen. They are Christians, and I do not like Bora Bora Christians, he said one day, when I, with the idea of getting him to spend some of the money that was rightfully his, had been trying to persuade him to make a visit to his own island in one of our schooners, a special voyage which I had to make a record breaker in the matter of prodigal expense. I say one of our schooners, though legally at the time they belonged to me. I struggled long with him to enter into partnership. We've been partners from the day the Petit Jean went down, he said at last. If your heart so wishes, then shall we become partners by the law. I have no work to do, yet are my expenses large. I drink and eat and smoke in plenty. It costs much, I know. I do not pay for the playing of billiards, for I play on your table. But still the money goes. Fishing on the reef is only a rich man's pleasure. It is shocking across the hooks and cotton lines. It is necessary that we be partners by the law. I need the money. I shall get it from the head clerk in the office. So the papers were made out and recorded. A year later I was compelled to complain. Charlie, said I, you were a wicked old fool, a miserly skinflint, a miserable landcrab. Behold, your share for the year in all our partnership has been $1,000. The head clerk has given me this paper. It says that in this year you have drawn just $87.20. Is there any owing me? He asked anxiously. I tell you, thousands and thousands, he answered. His face brightened as with a rent's relief. It is well, he said. See, the head clerk keeps good account of what when I want it, I shall want it, and there must not be a cent missing. If there is, he added fiercely after a pause, it must come out of the clerk's wages. And all the time, as I afterward learned, his will, drawn up by Crothers and making me sole beneficiary, lay in the American consul's safe. But the end came, as the end must come in all human associations. It occurred in the Solomons, where our wildest work had been done in the wild young days, and where we were once more, principally on holiday incidentally, to look after our holdings on Florida Island, and to look over the pearling possibilities of the Moboli Pass. We will learn at Sava, having run into trade for curios. Now Sava is alive with sharks. Accustomed with the woolly heads of burying their dead in the sea, did not tend to discourage the sharks from marking the adjacent waters, the hangar. But my luck to be coming aboard in a tiny, overloaded native canoe, and the thing capsized. The 4 woolly heads and myself on it, or rather aimed onto it, the schooner were 100 yards away. I was just hailing for a boat when one of the woolly heads began to scream. Holding on to the end of the canoe, both he and the portion of the canoe were dragged under several times. Then he loosed his clutch and disappeared. The shark had got him. The 3 remaining niggers tried to climb out of the water upon the bottom of the canoe. I yelled and cursed and struck at the nearest with my fist, but were no use. They were in a blind funk. The canoe could barely have supported one of them. Under the 3 it upended and rolled sideways, throwing them back in the water. I abandoned the canoe and started to swim towards the schooner, expecting to be picked up by the boat before I got there. One of the niggers elected to come with me, and we swam along silently side by side, now and again putting our face into the water, and peering about for sharks. The screams of the man who stayed by could have informed us that he was taken. I was peering at the water when I saw a big shark pass directly beneath me. It was fully 16 feet in length. I saw the old thing. He got the woolly head by the middle, and away he went. The poor devil, head, shoulders and arms out of the water all the time, screeching in a heart-rending way. He was carried along this fashion for several hundred feet, when he was dragged beneath the surface. I swam doggedly on, hoping that was the last unattached shark. There were another. Whether it was the one that attacked the natives earlier, whether it was one that had made good meal elsewhere, I do not know. At any rate, we were not in such an haste as the others. I could not swim so rapidly now, for a large part of my effort was devoted to keeping track of him. I was watching him when he made his first attack. By good luck, I got both hands on his nose, and though his momentum nearly shoved me under, I managed to keep him off. He veered clear and began circling about again. A second time I escaped him by the same manoeuvre. The third rush was a miss on both sides. He sheared at the moment my hands should have landed on his nose. His sandpaper eye, I had on sleeveless undershirt, scraped the skin off one arm from elbow to shoulder. But this time I played out and gave up hope. The schooner was still 200 feet away. My face was in the water, and I was watching him manoeuvre for another attempt, and I saw a brown body pass between us. It was Ottawa. "Swim for the schooner, master," he said. He spoke gaily, as though the affair were a mere lark. "I know shark. The shark is my brother." I obeyed, swimming slowly on, while Ottawa swam about me, keeping always between me and the shark, foiling his rushes and encouraging me. The davit tackle carried away, and they were rigging the fall, to explain, a minute or so later, and then went under to head off another attempt. By the time the schooner was 30 feet away, I was about done for. I could scarcely move. There were even lines at us from on board, but they continually fell short. The shark, finding that we were receiving no heart, had become bolder. Several times it nearly got me, but each time Ottawa were there, just a moment before it was too late. Of course, Ottawa could have saved himself at any time, but he stuck by me. "Goodbye, Charlie, I'm finished," I just managed to gasp. I knew that the end had come, and the next moment I should throw up my hands and go down. But Ottawa first laughed in my face, saying, "I will show you a new trick. Make the shark feel sick." He dropped in behind me, and the shark were preparing to come at me. "A little more to the left," the next called out. "There is a line there on the water. To the left, master, the left." I changed my course and struck out blindly. I was by that time barely conscious. As my hand closed on the line, I heard an exclamation from on board. I turned and looked. There was no sign of Ottawa. Next instant he broke the surface. Both hands were off at the wrist, the stump spouting blood. "Ottawa," he called softly, and I could see his gaze. In his gaze, the love that thrilled his voice. Then, and only then, at the very last of all our years, he called me by that name. "Goodbye, Ottawa," he called. And he was dragged under. I was all aboard where I fainted in the captain's arms. And so passed Ottawa, who saved me and made me a man, and who saved me in the end. We met in the maw of an hurricane, and parted in the maw of a shark. In 17 intervening years of comradeship, the like of which I dare to assert had never befallen two men, the one brown and the other white. If Jehovah be from his high place, watching every sparrow fall, not least in his kingdom shall be Ottawa, the one heathen of Bora Bora, and if there be no place for him in that kingdom, then I will have none of it. And that's the end of the Heathen. I'm somewhat conflicted about Jack London in certain aspects. I have a drink of water as well. When he talks about people who aren't white, Jack London somewhat confounds me in his attitudes. Because here in this book we have what is essentially the story of Ottawa, this incredible fella from Bora Bora, man who's decidedly not white, as the narrator accounts, and he is treated with a respect almost bordering on reverence. I mean, he's clearly better than any man we've ever really seen. In fact, I think any man we've seen in the Jack London story. He's smarter, stronger, more peaceable, more moral, knows more. He's an excellent father, he makes you better. He can see opportunity from miles away. He makes what must be a large fortune for his friend. Barely takes any of it, and only then to give it back at the end of his life. And he dies saving his man's life. And we see all this reverence of this man, and then at the same time we see, I don't know, there's a certain intonation in, well, I don't like the term woolly heads, that seems like a pretty descriptor, and there's also the M word that comes up. And I get the sense from the context in which it's been read that it's not a pleasant word for a person. I lack some context, having not been among people, but it always seems to be used in a derogatory manner. I don't think London's used it before. It's come up in a couple other books, but yeah, sometimes his attitude has sometimes been the same, like in Whitefang when he describes the Indians, and he's not shy as describing them as savage or cruel, but then at times he also describes them in admiring. And yeah, I sort of wonder if it's maybe deliberate. If we have this narrator describing the woolly heads and the N-words as savages and low and not to be trusted and all that, to highlight how genuine his praise of Ottawa must be, even to deny his place in the kingdom of heaven for the love of them. But at the same time, sometimes it does seem to be just genuine dismissal. And I know these stories are pretty old, comparatively, so it makes me think maybe that these were, or rather that his praise is the attitude of Jack London himself, and his dismissal is just the standard attitude of the time and form that the world habits. And it confounds me. It really does. I like the little tradition, though. I assume that's genuine, I don't know. But the idea of swapping names to become more than brothers, that's very... It's a striking idea at the least, whether there's anything to it or not. That's the rest of it. Well, let's see. No dogs in this one. And I suppose there's metaphorical gold, but no literal gold. Not a wealth being acquired. That's the transformation, though. Well, I get no. I was about to say there is. No, there is. The narrator becomes a better man, doesn't he? I'm thinking of Ottawa because the story is clearly about Ottawa, really and truly. Anyone who asked would say that, except Ottawa himself. It's the narrator, that Charlie, who becomes a better man, picks up cleaner habits because someone cares for him more than he cares for himself. There is the old London standby transformation. Yeah. It does seem to be a theme for the man. Let's have a little bit more water then. I thought it's still feeling pretty good, so I'm saving my lozenges. In case I decide to push on to do the Old Man and the Sea. I'll have a couple of them near the end of it, but I don't know if I'm going to. That one ran longer than I thought. I sort of had in my head that they were all going to take the same line, that sort of length of time, but also I read that one was out of order. The Man on the Trail was supposed to be next. I don't know what I'm doing. Yeah, it was a good one, but let's see, pretty long comparative to it, I think. I suppose a bit longer. Yeah, maybe half again longer. Definitely longer than Relic of the Pliocine. Lost Face were slightly longer than that. As to Man on the Trail, Man on the Trail is pretty short. That's about as long as Relic of the Pliocine. And then the Mexican, that's pretty long. But I think that's longer than the Heathen. Yeah, it is. Fair ways longer. Well, not hugely, but fair ways. So yeah, I think maybe we won't make a run at Old Man and Sea tonight. Maybe we'll save that for tomorrow. So I reckon if I do these two, that will sort of bring us up to a sort of 3-hour mark. And Old Man and the Sea is pretty long. I reckon that's going to be at least 2 hours in itself, maybe 3. much as Lab says I should be trying to do 6-hour ones of these, it's a bit of a lot, isn't it? It's a bit of a lot, especially when no one's here to talk to. I wonder if this would be easier if I had someone to talk to, if the break would do me good. As it is, I'm just sort of reading constantly, so I feel like I'm exhausting my voice more. There's no other space for anyone to talk. Don't know. Anyway, I'm gonna have another drink of water. Then I'll have a look in. And let's do let's do To the Man on the Trail, I should say. Save the Mexican for last, since it's long. Yeah, let's get to that now. To the Man on the Trail. Dump it in. But I say, kid, didn't that go on a little too strong? Whiskey and apple's bad enough. When it comes to brandy and pepper sauce, dump it in. Who's making this punch anyway? The Malamute kid smiled benignly through the clouds of steam. By the time you've been in this country as long as I have, my son, and lived on rabbit tracks and salmon belly, you'll learn that Christmas comes only once per annum. And a Christmas without punch is sinking an hole to the bedrock with nary a pastry. Stack up on that for a hark and see our approved Big Jim Belden, and come down from his claim on Maisie May as friend Christmas, and who, as everyone knew, had been living the 2 months past on straight moose meat. Hasn't forgot the hooch we made on the tanner, have you? Well, I guess yes, boys. We've all done. Would have done your hearts good to see the old tribe fighting drunk. All because of a glorious ferment of sugar and sourdough. Not before your time, the kid said as he turned to Stanley Prince, a young mining expert who'd been in 2 years. No white women in the country then, and Mason wanted to get married. Ruth's father was chief of the tanners and objected like the rest of the tribe. Stiff? I used my last pound of sugar, finest work in that line I ever did in my life. You should have seen the chase down the river and across the portage. The squaw, Oscar Savoy, a tall French Canadian, becoming interested. We had heard of this wild thing when at 40 Mile the preceding winter. Then Malmut Kid, who was a born raconteur, told the unvarnished tale of the northern Lochinvar. More than one rough adventure of the north felt his heartstrings draw closer, and experienced vague yearnings for the sunnier pastures of the Southland, where life promised something more than a barren struggle with cold and death. We struck the Yukon just behind the first ice run. The tribe only a quarter of an hour behind. That saved us. The second run broke the jam above and shut them out. When they finally got into Nucleato, the old posts were ready for them. And as to the foregathering, ask Father Abuir. He performed the ceremony. The Jesuit took the pipe from his lips, but could only express his gratification with patriarchal smiles, while Protestant and Catholic vigorously applauded. By gar, ejaculated Louis Savoy, who seemed overcome by the romance of it. A putty squaw on Mason Brave, by gar. Then, as the first tin cups of punch went round, Bettles, the unquenchable, sprang to his feet and struck up his favourite drinking song. Here's Harry Ward Beecher and Sunday school teachers all drinks of the sassafras root. The Bettle the same if it had its right name, are the juices of the forbidden fruit. Are the juices of the forbidden fruit? Right out the bacchanalian chorus. Are the juice of the forbidden fruit? But you Bettle the same if it's had its right name, it's the juice of the forbidden fruit. Malmut's kid's frightful concoction did its work. The men of the camp and trail unbent in its genial glow. Jest and song, tales of past adventure went round the board. Aliens from a dozen lands, they toasted each other all. There were the Englishman, Prince, who pledged Uncle Sam, the precious infant of the New World. The Yankee Bettles who drink to the Queen, God bless her, and together, Savoy and Myers, the German trader, clanged their cups to Alsace and Lorraine. Then Malmut Kid arose, cup in his hand, and glanced at the great greased paper window, where the frost stood full 3 inches thick. An health to the man on the trail this night. May his grub hold out, may his dogs keep their legs, may his matches never miss fire. Crack, crack. They heard the familiar music of the dog whip, the whining owl of the Malmuts, and the crunch of a sled as it drew up to the cabin. Conversation languished while they waited the issue. An old-timer cares for his dogs than himself, whispered Malmut Kid to Prince as they listened to the snapping jaws and wolfish snarls and yelps of pain which proclaimed to their practised ears the stranger were beaten back with dogs while he fed his eye. Then came the expected knock, sharp and confident, and the stranger entered. Dazzled by the light, he hesitated a moment at the door, giving all a chance for scrutiny. He was a striking personage, a most picturesque one, in his Arctic dress of wool and fur, standing 6'2" or 3", with proportionate breadth of shoulders and depth of chest. His smooth-shaven face, nipped by the cold, was gleaming pink, his long lashes and eyebrows white with ice, and the ear and neck flaps of his great wolfskin cap loosely raised. He seemed, in verity, the Frost King, just stepped in out of the night. Clasped outside his mackinaw jacket, a beaded belt held 2 large Colt revolvers and a hunting knife, while he carried, in addition to the inevitable dog whip, a smokeless rifle of the largest bore and latest pattern. As he came forward, for all his step was firm and elastic, they could see the fatigue pour heavily upon him. An awkward silence had fallen, but his hearty, "What cheer, my lads?" had been quickly at ease. And the next instant, Malmoot Kid and he gripped hands. Though they had never met, each had heard the other, and the recognition were mutual. A sweeping introduction and a mug of punch were forced upon him before he could explain his errand. "How long since the basket stage with the 3 men and 8 dogs passed?" he asked. "And even 2 days ahead. You after them?" "Yes, my team. Run them off under my very nose, the cusses. I gained 2 days on them already. Hit them up on the next run." "Reckon they'll show spunk?" asked Belden, in order to keep up the conversation. The Malmoot Kid already had the coffee pot on, and was busily frying bacon and moose meat. The stranger significantly tapped his revolvers. "When did you leave Dawson?" 12 o'clock. "Last night?" "Matter of course." "Today." A murmur of surprise passed around the circle, and well it might, for it was just midnight. 75 miles of rough river trail were not to be sneered at from a 12 hours run. The talk soon became impersonal, however, harking back to the trail's childhood. As the young stranger ate the rude fare, Malmoot Kid attentively studied his face. Nor was he long in deciding that it was fair, honest and open, and that he liked it. Still youthful, lines had been firmly traced by toil and hardship. Though genial in conversation, and mild and at rest, the blue eyes gave promise of the hard steel glitter which comes when called into action, especially against odds. The heavy jaw and square-cut chin demonstrated rugged pertinacity and indomitability. Nor, though the attributes of the lion were there wanting a certain softness, the interwomanliness which bespoke the emotional nature. So that's how me and the old woman got spliced," said Belton, concluding the exciting tale of his courtship. "Here we be, Dad," says she. "And may ye be damned," says he to her, and then to me, "Jim, you get out them good duds of yourn. I want a right part slice of that 38 of flour before dinner." And then he turns on her and says, "And yeah, Sally, you're sailing to them dishes." And then he sort of sniffled and kissed her, and I was that happy. "You seen me and the roars out, 'You Jim, you bet I dusted for the barn.'" "Any kids waiting for you back in the States?" asked the stranger. "Nope, so I died before any come. That's why I'm here." Belden abstractedly began to light his pipe, which had failed to go out, and then brightened up with, "How about yourself, stranger? Married man?" For reply, he opened his watch, slipped it from the thong which served for a chain, and passed it over. Belden picked up the slush lamp, surveyed the inside of the case critically, and swearing admiringly to himself, handed it over to Louis Savoy. Numerous bagarres, he finally surrendered it to Prince, and they noticed that his hands trembled and his eyes took on peculiar softness. And so it passed from horny hand to horny hand, the pasted photograph of a woman, the clinging tongue that such men fancy, with a babe at the breast. Those who had not yet seen the wonder were keen with curiosity. Those who had became silent and retrospective. They could face the pinch of famine, the grip of scurvy, or the quick death by field or flood, but the pictured sentiments of a stranger woman and child made women and children of them all. "Never have seen the youngster yet. He's a boy," she says. 2 years old," said the stranger, as he received the treasure back. A lingering moment he gazed upon it, then he snapped the case and turned away, but not quick enough to hide the restrained rush of tears. Malmoot Kid led them to a bunk, and bade him turn in. "Call me at 4 sharp, don't fail me," were his last words. A moment later he was breathing the heaviness of exhausted sleep. "By Jove, he's a plucky chap," commented Prince. 3 hours sleep after 75 miles with the dogs, and then the trail again. "Who is he, Kid?" "Jack Westendale. Been going on 3 years, with nothing but the name of working like an horse. Any amount of bad luck to his credit. I never knew him, but Sitka Charlie told me about him. Seems odd that a man with a sweet young wife like his should be putting in his years in this godforsaken hole. for every year counts 2 on the outside. The trouble is with him, clean grit and stubbornness. He's cleaned up twice for the stake, but lost it both times. Oh, hang on a sec, apparently we're having issues with the wards. What's up, man? Okay. Whoop. Okay, there we go. He'd clean up twice for the stake, but lost it both times. Here the conversation was broken off by an uproar from the betters. The affected began to wear away, and soon the bleak years of monotonous grub and deadening toil were being forgotten in rough merriment. Malmuk Kid alone seemed unable to lose himself, cast many an anxious look at his watch. Once he put on his mittens and beaver-skin cap, and leaving the cabin fell to rummaging about in the cache. Nor could he wait the hour designated. We were 15 minutes ahead of time in rousing his guest. The young giant had stiffened badly, and brisk rubbing was necessary to bring him to his feet. He tugged painfully out of the cabin to find his dogs, and everything ready for the start. The company wished him good luck. A short chase, while Father Abu hurriedly blessing him, led the stampede for the cabin. A small wonder, for it is not good to face 74 degrees below zero with naked ears and hands. Malmuk Kid saw them into the main trail, and there, gripping his hand, heartily gave him advice. "We'll find 100 pounds of salmon eggs on the sled," he said. "The dogs will go as far on that as with 150 of fish. You can't get dog food at Pelly, as you probably expected." The stranger started, and his eyes flashed. He did not interrupt. "You can't get an ounce of food for dog or man till you reach Farfingers, and that's a stiff 200 miles. Watch out for open water on the 30-mile river, and be sure to take the big cut-off above the Labarge." "How did you know it? Surely the news can't be ahead of me already." "I don't know it, and what's more, I don't want to know it. But you never own the team you're chasing. Sick of Charlie sold it to them last spring. He sized you up to me as a square once, and I believe him. I've seen your face, I like it, and I've seen, what damn you, hit the eye places for salt water and that wife of yours, and you hear the kid unmittened and jerked out his sack. No, I don't need it." The tears froze in his cheeks as he convulsively gripped the Malmuk Kid's hand. "And don't spare the dogs. Count out the traces as fast as they drop. Buy them and think they're cheap at $10 a pound. You can get them at 5 Fingers. Little salmon in the Hulan Quata. And watch out for wet feet," was a parting advice. "Keep the travelling up to 25. If it gets below that, build a fire and change your socks." 15 minutes had barely elapsed from the jingle of bells announced new arrivals. The door opened and a mounted policeman of the Northwest Territory entered, followed by 2 half-breed dog drivers. Like Westerdale, they were heavily armed and showed signs of fatigue. The half-breeds had been born on the trail and bore it easily, but the young policeman was badly exhausted. Still, the dogged obstinacy of his race held him to the pace he had set, and would hold him till he dropped in his tracks. "When did Westerdale pull out?" he asked. "He stopped here, didn't he?" This was supererogatory. The tracks told their own trail too well. Malmuk Kid had caught Belden's eye, and he, scent in the wind, replied evasively, "They're out part a while back." "Come, my man, speak up," the policeman admonished. "You seem to want him at right smart. He's been getting cantankerous, huh? Down Dawson way. Held up Harry McFarlane's for 40,000. Exchanged it at the PC Fort's door for a check on Seattle. And who's to stop the cashing of it if we don't overtake him? When did he pull out?" Every house suppressed its excitement. The Malmuk Kid had given the cue, and the young officer encountered wooden faces on every hand. Striding over the prince, he put the question to him. But him, gazing at the frank, earnest face of his fellow countryman, he replied inconsequentially on the state of the trail. Then he espied Father Roubaud, who could not lie. "A quarter of an hour ago," the priest answered. He had 4 hours rest for himself and the dogs. 15 minutes start and he's fresh. My God, the poor fellow staggered back, half fainting from exhaustion and disappointment, murmuring something about the run from Dawson in 10 hours and the dogs being played out. Malmuk Kid forced a mug of punch upon him. Then he turned for the door, ordering the dog drivers to follow. But the warmth and promise of rest were too tempting, and they objected strenuously. The Quid was conversant with their French patois, and followed it anxiously. They swore that the dogs were gone up. The Siwash and Babut would have to be shot before the first mile were covered, and the rest were almost as bad, and it would be better for all hands to rest up. "Lend me 5 dogs?" he asked, turning to Malmuk Kid. The kid shook his head. "I'll sign a cheque on Captain Constantine for 5,000. Here's my papers. I'm authorised to draw at my own discretion." Again the silent refusal. "And I'll requisition them in the name of the Queen." Smiling incredulously, the kid glanced at his well-stocked arsenal, and the Englishman, realising his impotency, turned for the door. The dog driver, still objecting, he whirled upon them fiercely, calling them women and curs. The swart-faced, the older half-breed, flushed angrily, as he drew himself up and promised in good, round terms that he would travel his leader off his legs, and would then be delighted to plant her into the snow. The young officer, and it required his whole will, walked steadily to the door, exhibiting a freshness he did not possess. But they all knew and appreciated his proud effort, nor could he veil the twinges of agony that shot across his face. Covered with frost, the dogs were curled up in the snow, and were almost impossible to get them to their feet. The poor brutes whined under the stinging lash, and the dog drivers were angry and cruel. Nor till Babette, the leader, would cut from the traces could they break out the sled and get under way. A dirty scoundrel and a liar, by God, him no good, a thief, worse than an Injun. It was evident they were angry, first at the way they'd been deceived, and second at the outraged ethics of the North, where honesty above all was a man's prime jewel, and we gave the cuss an hand after knowing what he did. All eyes were turned accusingly upon Malmutkin, who rose from the corner where he had been making Babette comfortable, and silently emptied the bowl for a final round of punch. It's a cold night, boys, a bitter cold night, for the irrelevant commencement of his defence. You've all travelled trail, and you know what that stands for. Don't jump a dog when he's down, you've only heard one side. A whiter man than Jack Westerdale never ate from the same pot, nor stretched a blanket with you or me. Last fall he gave his old clean-up 40,000 to Joe Castro. If I in on Dominion today, he'd be a millionaire. While he stayed behind at Clive City, taking care of his partner with the scurvy, what does Castro do? Goes in at Farlands, jumps the limit and drops the old sack. Found him dead in the snow the next day. And poor Jack lay in his plans to go out this winter with wife and the boy he's never seen. You notice he took exactly what his partner lost, 40,000. Well, he's gone out, and what are you going to do about it? The kid glanced around the circle of his judges, noted the softening of their faces, and raised his mug aloft. To an elf, the man on the trail this night. May his grub hold out, may his dogs keep their legs, may his matches never miss. God prosper him, good luck go with him, and confuse him to the mounted police, cried Pennell, with a crash of empty cups. That's the end of the man on the trail. I'm right at the 2-hour mark. Whoa. I was tempted me to call it right there, just for the roundness of it. Nah, for sure. Drop of water first, oh Lord. Oh, I'm thirsty, mate. I think it's the water being warm. It doesn't cool quite so well as it should. But yeah, that's let's go over the London markers then. We got gold in a sense, $40,000, and while it's not in actual gold, it might well be that the cash that was stolen was in actual gold, this being the whole North gold rush thing being on. There's a tangential link. And then there is, what is there? There's dogs, obviously there's dogs, lots of dogs in this. We have a team of dogs, well several teams of dogs, being careful before the men, and Babette being needed to be cut out of the traces, and all this. And the story of a stolen team, although that's just a fiction. Do we have transformation? There's a question. Maybe we do, I'm not sure. You got this man whose name I've already forgotten. The fellow who stole the 40,000. Who's reckoned a good chap, and who seems to have done right by everyone who steals this money. I don't know if that's transforming though. I mean, I'm not exactly, I'm a rat, I can't exactly claim to be a moral paragon. And to my mind, stealing a bit of money, especially from somewhere like a bank, ain't necessarily a bad thing, especially if it lets him go home with his family and live his life, caring for him. You know what? Confusion to the Canadian Mounted Police. I'm with it. No transformation. I think he done right. I think he stands a square man the old time. Yeah, we've got a good little cast of characters. Yard Men of the North. I think that's about it, really. Yeah. Gotta give some respect to the Malmut kid, though. He turned down $5,000 for a team. And that's a ludicrous sum of money. Team of 5 dogs. And I think back in Call of the Wild, they only offered 1,000 for the buck. straight up. There was a bet placed on him for more than that, but 1,000 were the offer for him, and he were the most impressive dog sort of in the Northland at the time, so he's paying top possible dollar for a team, and now the kid turns it down. It's respectable. I guess being in a cabin in the middle of nowhere, maybe you just need a team. And he got a free dog out of the deal too, so I suppose it didn't go too badly for him. And a team lead shows the wisdom to refuse to run until cut out the traces, as do some of the best dogs we see in London stories. So, good dog too. He does well from the affair. But yeah, I like this. I like this story. It's a story of pulling together to get one over on the powers that be. And as a rat, I can very much respect that. So we're left with only one more story that I name. The Mexican. And I don't think I'm gonna push for whole band this evening. I'm not feeling a 6-hour session. I'm barely feeling the Mexican, if I'm honest, but I want to round this out. Next time I'm reading from the Jack London shelf, will be the next shelf over. I think there's still enough in that little seam up in Thundering to fill it out. Yeah. So I'm putting it off now. Don't want to start it, don't want to do it, but no sense putting it off. I'll do it tonight or another night. And the more I've read, the more I've read. The better my commentary, and perhaps the more chance someone will come along, stay around and listen to me. Not that anyone ever seems to, huh? No, so let's be evident then, huh? The Mexican. Nobody knew his history. They, the junta at least. He was their little mystery, their big patriot, and in his way he worked hard for the coming of the common Mexican revolutions did they. They were tardy in recognising this, but not one of the junta liked him. The day he first drifted into their crowded, busy rooms, they all suspected him of being a spy, one of the bought tools of the Diaz Secret Service. Too many of the comrades was in civil and military prisons scattered over the United States, and others of them in irons were even then being taken across the border to be lined up against adult balls and shot. At first sight, the boy did not impress them favourably. Boy he was, not more than 18 and not over large for his years. He announced that he was Felipe Rivera, and that it was his wish to work for the revolution. That was all, not a wasted word, no further explanation. He stood waiting. There was no smile on his lips, no geniality in his eyes. Big dashing Paulino Vera felt an inward shudder. Here was something forbidden, terribly inscrutable. There was something venomous and snake-like in the boy's black eyes. They burned like cold fire, with a vast and concentrated bitterness. He flashed them from the faces of the conspirators to their typewriter. This little Mrs. Sethby was industriously operating. His eyes rested on hers, but an instant. She chanced to look up, and she too sensed the name as something that made her pause. She was compelled to read that in order to regain the swing of the letter she was writing. Paulino Vera looked questioningly at Ariano and Ramos. Questioningly they looked back and to each other. The indecision of doubt brooded in their eyes. The slender boy were unknown, vested with all the menace of the unknown. You were unrecognisable, something quite beyond the ken of honest, ordinary revolutionists, whose fiercest hatred for Diaz and his tyranny, after all, was only that of honest and ordinary patriots. It was something else, they knew not what. But Vera, always the most impulsive, quickest to act, stepped in the breach. Very well, he said coldly. You say you want to work for the revolution. Take off your coat, hang it over there, I will show you. Come, where are the buckets and cloths? The floor is dirty. We will begin by scrubbing it, and scrubbing the floors of the other rooms. The spittoons need to be cleaned, there are the windows. Is it for the revolution? The boy asked. It is for the revolution, Vera answered. With a look, cold suspicion at all of them, and proceeded to take off his coat. It is well, he said, and nothing more. Day after day he came to his work, sweeping, scrubbing, cleaning. He emptied the ashes from the stoves, brought up the coal and kindling, and lighted the fire before the most energetic one of them was at his desk. "Can I sleep here?" he asked once. Aha, so that was it. The hand of Diaz showing through. To sleep in the rooms of the junta and access to their secrets. The list of names to the addresses of comrades down on Mexican soil. The request were denied, and Rivera never spoke of it again. He slept there knew not where, and ate there knew not when, nor how. Once, Marilano offered him a couple of dollars. Rivera declined the money with a shake of the head. We rejoined in and tried to press it upon him. He said, "I am working for the revolution." It takes money to raise a modern revolution, and always the junta were pressed. The members starved and toiled, and the longest day were none too long, and yet there were times when it appeared as if the revolution stood or fell on no more than the matter of a few dollars. Once, the first time when the rent of the house was 2 months behind and the landlord were threatening dispossession, where Felipe Rivera, the scrub boy, and the poor, cheap clothes, worn and threadbare, laid $60 in gold on May Sethby's desk. There were other times. 300 letters clicked out on the busy typewriter, appeals for assistance, for sanctions from the organised labour groups, requests for square new deals to the editors of newspapers, protests against the high-handed treatment of revolutionists by the United States courts. They unmailed or went postage. Vera's watch had disappeared, the old-fashioned gold repeater that had been his father's. Likewise had gone the plain gold band from May Sethby's third finger. Things were desperate. Ramos and Arellano pulled their long moustaches in despair. The letters must go off. The post office allowed no credit to purchasers of stamps. Then it was that Ramos put his hat on and went out. When he came back, he laid 1,000 2-cent stamps on May Sethby's desk. "I wonder if it's the cursed gold of Diaz," said Vera to the comrades. They elevated their brows and could not decide. And Felipe Rivera, the scrubber for the revolution, continued, as occasion arose, to lay down gold and silver for their junta's use. And still they could not bring themselves to like him. They did not know him. His ways were not there. He gave no confidences, repelled all probing. Youth that he was, they could never nerve themselves to dare to question him. A great and lonely spirit, perhaps. "I do not know, I do not know," Ariana said helplessly. "He is not human," said Ramos. "His soul has been seared," said Mary Sethby. "Light and laughter have been burned out of him. He is like one of the dead, and he is fearfully alive." "He has been through hell," said Vera. "A man could look that way who has not been through hell, and he is only a boy." Yet they could not like him. He never talked, never inquired, never suggested. He would stand listening, expressionless, the thing dead save for his eyes, coldly burning, while their talk of the revolution ran high and warm. From face to face, and speaker to speaker, his eyes would turn, boring like gimlets of incandescent ice, disconcerting and perturbing. "He is no spy," Vera confided to May Sethby. "He is a patriot, mark me, the greatest patriot of us all. I know it, I feel it here in my heart, and head I feel it. For him I know not at all." "He has a bad temper," said May Sethby. "I know," said Vera with a shudder. "He has looked at me with those eyes of his. They do not love, they threaten. Our savages are wild tigers. I know if I should prove unfaithful to the cause, he would kill me. He has no heart. He is pitiless as steel, keen and cold as frost. He is like moonshine in winter night, and a man freezes to death on some lonely mountain top. I am not afraid of Diaz and all his killers, but this boy, of him I am afraid. I tell you true, I am afraid. He is the breath of death." Yet Vera it was who persuaded the others to give the first trust to Rivera. The line of communication between Los Angeles and Lower California had broken down. 3 of the comrades had dug their own graves and been shot into them. 2 more were United States prisoners in Los Angeles. Juan Alvarado, the federal commander, was a monster. All their plans did he checkmate. They could no longer gain access to the active revolutionists and the incipient ones in Lower California. Young Rivera were given his instructions and dispatched south. When he returned, the lines of communication was re-established, and Juan Alvarado was dead. He had been found in bed, a knife held deep in his breast. This had exceeded Rivera's instructions. They of the junta knew that at times of his movements. They did not ask him. He said nothing. They looked at one another and conjectured. "I have told you," said Vera. "Diaz had more to fear from this youth than from any man. He is implacable. He is the hand of God." The bad temper mentioned by May Sethby, and sensed by them all, were evidenced in the physical proof. were evidenced by physical proofs. Now he appeared with a cut lip, a blackened cheek, or a swollen ear, a pattern that he had brought somewhere in that outside world where he ate and slept gained money and moved in ways unknown to them. As the time passed, he'd come to set pipe for the little revolutionary sheet they published weekly. There were occasions when he were unable to set pipe, when his knuckles were bruised and battered, when his thumbs were injured and helpless, when one arm or the other hung wearily at his side, while his face was drawn with unspoken pain. "A wastrel," said Ariana. "A frequenter a low place," said Ramos. "Where does he get the money?" buried the money. "Only today, just now, I have learned that he paid the bill for white paper. $140. "There are his absences," said May Sefty. "He never explains them. We should set a spy upon him," Ramos propounded. "I should not care to be that spy," said Vera. "I fear you would never see me again, save to bury me. He has a terrible passion. Not even God would he permit to stand between him and the way of his passion. I feel like a child before him," Ramos confessed. "And he is power. He is the primate of the wild wolf, the striking rattlesnake, the stinging centipede," said Ariana. "He is the revolution incarnate," said Vera. "He is the flame and the spirit of it, the insatiable cry for vengeance that makes no cry, and slays noiselessly. He is a destroying angel moving through the still watches of the night." "I could weep over him," said Mesa. "He knows nobody. He hates all people. Us he tolerates, for we are the way of his desire. He is alone, lonely." Her voice broken and half sobbed, there was dimness in her eyes. But Vera's ways and palms were truly mysterious. There were periods when they did not see him for a week at a time. Once he was away a month. These occasions were always capped by his return when, without advertisement or speech, he laid gold coins on May Sefti's desk. Again, for days and weeks, he spent all his time with the junta, and yet again, for irregular periods, he would disappear through the art of each day, from early morning until late afternoon. At such times he came early and remained late. Ariana had found him at midnight setting pipe with fresh swollen knuckles, or perhaps it was his lip, new split, that still played. There's a little break here, into a second segment. Now I'm going to take it to have a quick drink. I'm feeling thick all of a sudden. Whoa. It's starting to creep up on me, this. But it's striking. It's a good story. I'm glad to be reading it. I do not think I could hold through for an old man in the sea, though. Oh, I do not think I could hold through it at all. Oh. Oh, Lord. Getting to me. It really is getting to me. Well, I don't think the hot water is helping. Well, I think I'll have that one of my throat pastors now. I had 2 of them. May as well. Should be good enough to get me through the end there. Well, through the end at least, yes. I don't look after my throat very well, but I don't know how I'm supposed to. I've nothing to give it. There are some books out there, books in the stuff that Lamp don't consider good, go in a separate little room. Have stuff about medicine in them, but I don't have any ingredients for medicine. I know that throat wants honey and lemon and such, but I've no idea getting them. Might be some of the pastels I've given me, but I'm no way of administering it myself. So. Part 2. The time of the crisis approached. Whether or not the revolution would be dependent upon the junta, and the junta were hard pressed. The need for money were greater than ever before, while money were hard to get. Patriots had given their last cent and now could give no more. Section gang labourers, fugitive peons from Mexico, were contributing half their scanty wages. And more than that were needed. The heartbreaking, conspiring, undermined, toily years approached fruition. Time will run. The revolution hung in the balance. One shove more, one last heroic effort, and it would tremble across the scales to victory. They knew their Mexico. Once started, the revolution would take care of itself. The old Diaz machine would go down like an Aztec car. The border were ready to rise. One Yankee with 100 IWW men waited the word to cross over the border and begin the conquest of Lower California. But he needed guns. And clear across the Atlantic, the junta in touch with them all, and all of them needing guns. Mere adventurers, soldiers of fortune, bandits, disgruntled American Union men, socialists, anarchists, ruffians, Mexican exiles, peons escaped from bondage, whipped miners from the bullpens of Coeur d'Alene, Colorado, who desired only the more vindictively to fight. All the flotsam and jetsam of wild spirits from a madly complicated modern world. That was guns and ammunition and guns, the unceasing and eternal cry. Fling this heterogeneous, bankrupt, vindictive mass across the border, and the revolution were on. The custom house, the northern ports of entry would be captured. Diaz could not resist. He dared not throw the weight of his armies against them. He must hold the south. And through the south the flame would spread despite. The people would rise. The defence of city after city would crumple up. State after state would totter down. At last, from every side, the victorious armies of revolution would close on the city of Mexico itself, Diaz's last stronghold. But the money. They had the men, impatient and urgent, who would use the guns. They knew the traders who would sell and deliver the guns. But the culture of the revolution thus far had exhausted the junta. The last dollar had been spent, the last resource and the last starving patriot milked dry, and the great adventure still remained on the scales. Guns and ammunition. The ragged battalions must be armed, but how? Ramos lamented his confiscated estates. Ariano wailed the spendthriftness of his youth. May Sethby wondered if it would have been different if they'd been of the junta been more economical in the past. They think that the freedom of Mexico should stand or fall on a few paltry $1,000, said Paulino Vera. Despair in their faces. Jose Amarillo, the last hope, a recent convert who had promised money, had been apprehended in his last hacienda in Chihuahua and shot against his own stable wall. The news had just come through. Rivera, on his knees scrubbing, looked up with suspended brush, his bare arms flecked with soapy, dirty water. Will 5,000 do it? He asked. They looked their amazement. Vera nodded and swallowed. He could not speak. He was on the instant invested with a vast weight. Order the guns, Vera said, and thereupon were guilty of the longest flow of words they had ever heard him utter. Time is short. In 3 weeks I shall bring you 5,000, as well. The weather will be warmer for those who fight. Also, it is the best I can do. Vera thought his day. It was incredible. Too many fond hopes had been shattered since he had begun to play the revolutionary game. He believed this threadbare scrubber of the revolution, but he dared not believe. You are crazy, he said. In 3 weeks, said Rivera. Order the guns. He got up, rolled down his sleeves and put on his coat. Order the guns, he said. I am going now. Part the third. After hurrying and scurrying, much telephoning and bad language, a night session were held in Kelly's office. Kelly were rushed with business, also. They were unlucky. He had brought Danny Ward out from New York, arranged a flight for him with Billy Carthy. The date was 3 weeks away, and for 2 days now, carefully concealed from the spotlight-writers, Carthy had been lying up, badly injured. There were no one to take his place. Kelly had been burning the wires, east to every eligible lightweight, but they were tied up with dates and contracts. Now hope had revived, though faintly. Got a hell of a nerve, Kelly addressed Rivera after one look as soon as they got together. Hate that was malignant was in Rivera's eyes, but his face remained impassive. I can lick Ward, was all he said. How do you know? Ever seen him fight? Rivera shook his head. He can beat you up with one hand and both eyes closed. Rivera shrugged his shoulders. Haven't you got anything to say? The fight promoter snarled. I can lick him. Who'd you ever fight anyway? Michael Kelly demanded. Michael was the promoter's brother and ran Yellowstone pool rooms, where he made goodly sums on the fight game. Rivera favoured him with a bitter, unanswering stare. The promoter's secretary, a distinctly sporty young man, sneered audibly. Well, you know, Roberts, Kelly broke the hostile silence. You ought to be here. I've sent for him. Sit down and wait, but from the looks of you, you haven't got a chance. I can't throw the public down with a bum fight. Ringside seats are selling at $15, you know that. When Roberts arrived, it was patent that he was mildly drunk. He was a tall, lean, slack-jawed individual, and his walk, like his talk, was a smooth and languid drawl. Kelly went straight to the point. Look here, Roberts, you've been bragging. You discovered this little Mexican. You know Carthy's broke his arm? Well, this little yellow streak is the gore to blow in the day and say he'll take Carthy's place. What about it? It's all right, Kelly, came the slow response. He can put up a fight. I suppose you'll be saying next that he can lick Ward, Kelly snapped. Roberts considered judiciously. No, I won't say that. Ward's a top-notcher, a ring general. You can't ask Rivera in short order. I know Rivera. Nobody can get his goat. He ain't got a goat I could ever discover. There's a two-handed fighter. He can throw in the sleep makers from any position. Never mind that. What kind of a show can he put on? You've been conditioning and training fighters all your life. I take off my hat to your judgment. Can you give the public a run for its money? You sure can, and don't worry. Ward, I might heap on top of him. You don't know that boy. I do. I discovered him. He ain't got a goat. He's a devil. He's a wizzy-wooz if anyone should ask you. He'll make Ward sit up with a show of local talent and make the rest of you sit up. I won't say a lip, Ward, but he'll put up such a show that you'll all know he's a corner. He's a comer. Alright, if I turn to the secretary. Bring up Ward. I want him to show up if I thought it worthwhile. He's right across the Yellowstone, throwing chests and doing the popular. Kelly turned back to the Teshula. Have a drink? Robert sipped his eyeball and unburdened himself. Never told you I discovered the little cuss. A couple of years ago, he showed up out of the quarters. I was getting praying ready for his fight with Delaney. Brain's wicked. He ain't got a tickle of mercy in his makeup. He chopped up his partner something cruel, and I couldn't find a willing boy that would work him. I noticed this little starved Mexican hanging around, and I was desperate. So I grabbed him, slammed on the gloves, and put her in. He was tougher than Roy-eyed, but weak. He didn't know the first letter in the alphabet of boxing. Brain chopped him with the ribbons. He armed for 2 sickening rounds, and he fainted. Starvation, that rule. Battered. He couldn't recognise them. I gave him $50 and a square meal. You would have seen him wolf it down. He hadn't had a bite for a couple of days. That's the end of him, thinks I. Next day he showed up, stiff and sore, ready for another half. A square meal. And he got better as time went by. Just a born fighter, tough beyond belief. He has an art, he's a piece of ice. He never talked 11 words in a string since I known him. He saw wood and does his work. I've seen him, Secretary said. He's worked a lot for you. All the big little fellows tried out on him, Woods answered. And he learned from them. I've seen some of them he could lick. There's aren't one in it. I reckon he never liked the game. He seemed to act that way. He's been fighting some before the little clubs the last few months, can I show? Sure. I don't know what struck him all of a sudden in his heart. I don't know what struck him. All of a sudden his heart got into it. He just went out like a street and cleaned up all the little local fellas. Seemed to want the money, and he's won a bit, but his clothes don't look it. He's peculiar. Nobody knows his business. Nobody knows how he spends his time. Even when he's on the job, he bums up and disappears most of each day as soon as his work is done. Sometimes he just blows away for weeks at a time. But he don't take advice. There's a fortune in it for the fellow who gets the job of managing him, only he won't consider it. And you watch him hold out for the cash money when you get down to terms. And by this stage, there's Danny Warder. Quite a party it was. His manager and trainer were with him, and he breezed in like a gusty draft. Geniality, good nature, and all conqueringness. Greetings flew about, a joke here, a retort there, a smile or a laugh for everybody. It was his way, and only partly sincere. He was a good actor, and he found generally geniality a most valuable asset in the game of getting on in the world. But down underneath, he was a deliberate, cold-blooded fighter and businessman. The rest were a mask. Those who knew him or trafficked with him said that when it came to brass tacks, he was Danny on the spot. He was invariably present in all business discussions, and it was heard by some that his manager was a blind whose only function was to serve as Danny's mouthpiece. Rivera's way was different. Indian blood, as well as Spanish, were in his veins, and he sat back in a corner, silent, immobile, only his black eyes passing from face to face, noting everything. That's the guy, Danny said, running with Fred, and appraising eye over his proposed antagonist. How do you do, old chap? Rivera's eyes burned venomously. He made no sign of acknowledgement. He disliked all gringos, but this gringo he ate with an immediacy unusual even in him. God, Danny protested facetiously to the revolver. You won't expect me to fight the deaf mute? When the laughter subsided, he made another hit. Los Angeles must be on the dink when this is the best he can scare up. What kindergarten you get him from? He's a good little boy, Danny, take it from me. That was the thing. Not as easy as he looks. And half the house is sold already, Kelly pleaded. You'll have to take him on, Danny. It's the best we can do. Danny ran another careless and unflattering glance over Rivera and sighed. I've got to be easy with him, I guess. If only you don't blow up. Robert snorted. You gotta be careful, Danny Manners was warned. No taking chances with a dub that's likely to sneak a lucky one across. Oh, I'll be careful, all right, Danny said, smiled. I'll get him at the start and nurse him along for the dear public's sake. What do you say to 15 rounds, Kelly? And then the A for him. That'll do, was the answer. As long as you can make it realistic. Let's get down to biz. Danny paused and calculated. Of course, 65% of gate receipts, same as McCarthy. but the split will be different. 80 will just about suit me. His manager, that right? Manager nodded. Here, you get that? Kelly asked Rivera. Rivera shook his head. Well, it's this way, Kelly exposited. The first will be 65% of the gate receipts. You're a dub and an unknown. You and Danny split, 20% going to you and 80 to Danny. That's fair, isn't it, Roberts? Very fair, Rivera, Roberts agreed. You see, you ain't got a reputation yet. What will 65% of the gate receipts be? Rivera demanded. Oh, maybe 5,000, maybe as high as 8,000, Danny Bretton explained. Something like that. Your share will come to something like 1,000 or 1,600. Pretty good for taking a licking from a guy with my reputation. What do you say? Then Rivera took their breaths away. Winner takes all, he said with finality. The dead silence prevailed. Like taking candy from a baby, and his manager proclaimed. Danny shook his head. I've been in the game too long. I'm not casting reflections on the referee or the present company. I'm not saying nothing about bookmakers and frame-ups that sometimes happen. What I do say is there's poor business for fighters like me. I'll play it safe. There's no telling. Maybe I break my arm, eh? Or some guy slips me a bunch of dough. He shook his head solemnly. Win or lose, 80 is my split. What do you say, Mexican? Rivera shook his head. Danny exploded. He's getting down to brass tacks now. Oh, you dirty little greaser. Have a mind to knock your block off right now. Roberts drawled his body into position between hostilities. Winner takes all, Rivera replied solemnly. Why do you stand out that way? Danny asked. I can lick you, was the straight answer. Danny started to take off his coat, but as his manager knew, it was grandstand play. The coat did not come off. Danny allowed himself to be located by the group. Everybody sympathised with him. Rivera stood alone. Look here, you little fool, You're nobody. We're nobody. We know what you've been doing the last few months, putting away little local fighters. But Danny's class. This next fight after this will be the championship, and you're unknown. Nobody had ever heard of you out of Los Angeles. Very well, Rivera answered with a shrug. After this fight. You think for a second you can lick me? Danny blurted in. Rivera nodded. Oh, come, listen to reason, Kelly pleaded. Think the advertising. I want the money, Rivera's answer. You couldn't win from me in 1,000 years, Danny assured him. Then what are you holding out for? Rivera countered. If the money's that easy, why don't you go after it? I will, sir, help me, I cried with a brunt conviction. I'll beat you to death in the ring, my boy, you monkeying with me this way. Make out the articles, Kelly. Winner take all. Fly up in the sporting column. Tell him it's a grudge fight. I'll show this fresh kid up to you. Kelly's secretary had begun to write when Danny interrupted. Hold on, returned Rivera. Wait. Ringside came the answer. Not in your life, fresh kid. Winner takes all, weigh in at 10 a.m. And winner takes all? Rivera queried. Danny nodded. That settled it. He would enter the ring in his full ripeness of strength. Weigh in at 10, Rivera said. The secretary's pen went on stretching. Means £5, Roberts complained to Rivera. You're giving too much away. You're throwing the fight right there. Danny will be as strong as a bull. You're a fool. He'll lick you, sure. You ain't got the chance of a dewdrop in hell. Rivera's answer were a calculated look of hatred. Even this gringo he despised. And Emmy had found the whitest gringo of them all. Barely noticed was Rivera as he entered the ring. Only a very slight and very scattering ripple of arse-hearted hand clapping greeted him. The house did not believe in him. He was a lamb led to slaughter at the hands of the great Danny. Besides, the house was disappointed. He expected a Russian battle between Danny Ward and Billy Carthy, and here it must part with this poor little tyro. Still further, he manifested his disapproval of the change by betting 2 and even 3 to 1 on Danny. And where a betting audience's money is, there is its heart. The Mexican boy sat down in his corner and waited. The slow minutes lagged by. Danny were making him wait. It was an old trick, but ever it worked on the young new fighters. They grew frightened, sitting thus and facing their own apprehensions and callous, tobacco-smoking audience. But once the trick failed. Roberts were right. Rivera had no gun. He was more delicately coordinated, more finely nerved and strong than any of them. Had no nerves of this sort. The atmosphere of foredoomed defeat in his own corner had no effect on him. His handlers were gringos and strangers. Also there were scrubs, the dirty driftage of the fight game without honour, without efficiency. They were chilled as well. The certitude that theirs was a losing corner. Now you've got to be careful, Spider agony warned them. Spider was his chief second. Make it last as long as you can. Them's my instructions from Kelly. If you don't, the papers call it another bum fight. It became a bigger black eye in Los Angeles. All of which was not encouraging, but Rivera took no notice. He despised prize fighting. It was the hated game of the hated gringo. He'd taken up with it as a chopping block for others in training quarters, solely because he was starving. The fact that he was marvellously made for it meant nothing. He hated it. Not until he had come in with a hunter had he felt for money. He had found the money easy. Not first among the sons of men had he even find himself successful at this despised vocation. He did not analyse. He merely knew that he must win this fight. There could be no other outcome. But behind him, nerving him would be disbelief, but profounder forces than the crowd-house dream. Danny Ward fought for money, the easy ways of life that money would bring. But the things Rivera fought for burned in his brain, blazing in terrible visions that, with eyes wide open, sitting lonely in the corner of the ring and waiting for his tricky antagonist, he saw as clearly as if he had lived them. He saw the white-walled, water-powered factories of Rio Blanco. He saw the 6,000 workers starved and wan, and the little children, 7 and 8 years of age, toiled long shifts for 10 cents a day. He saw the perambulating corpses, ghastly death's head of men who laboured in the dye rooms. He remembered that he had heard his father call the dye rooms suicide hole, for a year were death. He saw the little patio, his mother cooking and moiling at crude housekeeping, finding time to caress and love him. And his father he saw, large, big-moustached and deep-chested, kindly above all men, who loved all men and whose heart was so large that were loved to overflow and still left for the mother and the little mustachio muchacho playing in the corner of the patio. In these days his name had not been Felipe Rivera, it had been Fernandez, his father and mother's name. Him they had called Juan. Later he had changed it himself. He had found the name of Fernandez hated by the prefects of police, jefes politicos and rurales. Big hardy Joaquin Fernandez, a large place he occupied in Rivera's visions. He had not understood at the time, but looking back he could understand. He could see him setting type in the little printery, scribbling endless hasty nervous lines in the much-cluttered desk. And he could see the strange evening when workmen coming secretly in the dark like men who did ill deeds met with his father. He talked long hours where he, muchacho, lay not always asleep in the corner. From a remote distance he could hear Spider Agony saying to him, "No laying down at the start, them's instructions, take a beating and earn your dough." 10 minutes had passed, he still sat in his corner. There were no sign of Danny, who were evidently playing the trick to the limit, but more visions burned before the eyes of Rivera's memory. The strike, or rather the lockout, because the workers of Rio Blanco had helped their striking brothers of Puebla. The hunger, the expeditions in the hills for berries, the roots and herbs, all ate, and twisted and painted the stomachs of all of them. And then the nightmare, the waste of ground before the company's store, the thousands of starving workers, General Rosalino Martinez and the soldier of the Porfirio Diaz, and the death-spitting rifles that seemed never to cease spitting, while the workers' wrongs were washed and washed again in their own blood. And that night, he saw the flat cars piled high with the bodies of the slain, consigned to Veracruz, food for the sharks of the bay. Again he crawled over the grizzly heaps, seeking and finding, stripped and mangled his father and his mother. His mother he especially remembered, only her face projected, the body burdened by the weight of dozens of bodies. Again the rifles of the soldiers of Porfirio Diaz cracked, and again he dropped to the ground and slunk away like some hunted coyote of the hills. To his ears came a great roar, as the sea, and he saw Danny Ward leading his retinue of trainers, in seconds, coming down the centre aisle. The house room wild uproar, for the popular hero were bound to win. Everybody proclaimed him. Everybody were for him. Even Rivera's own second warmed to something akin to cheerfulness when Danny ducked jauntily through the ropes and into the ring. His face continually spread to an unending succession of smiles, and when Danny smiled, he smiled in every feature, even the laughter wrinkles in the corner of the eyes and the depth of the eyes themselves. Never was there so genial a fighter. His face were a running advertisement of good feeling, of good fellowship. He knew everybody. He joked and laughed and greeted his friends through the ropes. Those farther away, unable to suppress their admiration, cried loudly, "How are you, Danny?" There were a joyous ovation and affection that lasted a full 5 minutes. Rivera was disregarded. For all the audience noticed, he did not interest. Spider Agony's bloated face bent down and close to us. "No getting scared," Spider warned. "Remember instructions, you got to last. No laying down. If you lay down, we got instructions to beat you up in the air, dress you. Savvy? You just got to fight." The house began to applaud. Danny were crossing the ring to him. Danny bent over, causing Rivera's right hand in both his own, caught Rivera's right hand in both his own and shook it with impulsive ugliness. Danny's smile-wreathed face was close to his. The audience yelled its appreciation of Danny's display of sporting spirit. He was greeting his opponent with the fondness of a brother. Danny's lips moved as the audience, interpreting the unheard words to be those of kind-natured sport, yet again. Only Rivera heard the low word. "You little Mexican rat," whispered between Danny's gaily smiling lips. "I'll fetch the yellow out of you." Rivera made no move. He did not rise, humiliated with his eyes. "Get up, you dog," some man yelled through the rope behind. The crowd began to hiss and boo at him for his unsportsmanlike conduct, but he sat unmoved. Another great outburst of applause was Danny's as he walked back across the ring. When Danny stripped, there were ohs and ahs of delight. His body was perfect, alive with easy suppleness, health and strength. The skin was white as a woman's and as smooth. All grace and resilience and power resided therein. He proved it in scores of battles. His photographs were in all the physical culture magazines. A groan went up as Spider Agony peeled Rivera's sweater over his head. His body seemed leaner because of the swarthiness of the skin. He had muscles, but they made no display like his opponents. What the audience neglected to see was his deep chest, nor could it guess the toughness of the fibre of the flesh, the instantaneousness of the cell explosions of muscle, the fineness of the nerves that wired every part of him in a splendid fighting mechanism. All the audience saw was a brown-skinned boy of 18, with what seemed the body of a boy. With Danny it was different. Danny were a man of 24, his body were a man's body. The contrast was still more striking as they stood together in the centre of the ring, receiving the referee's last instructions. Rivera noticed Robert sitting directly behind the newspaperman. He was drunker than usual, and his speech was correspondingly slower. "Take it easy, Rivera," "He can't kill you, remember that? He'll rush you at the go, but don't get rattled. You just cover up and stall and clinch. He can't hurt you much. Just make believe to yourself that he's chopping out on the art you at the training quarters." Rivera made no sign that he had heard. "Silent little devil," Roberts muttered, the man next to him. "He always was that way." But Rivera forgot to look his usual hatred. A vision of countless rifles blinded his eyes. Every face in the audience, as far as he could see the dollar seats, were transformed into a rifle. And he saw the long Mexican border, arid and sun-washed and aching, and along it he saw the ragged bands delayed only for the guns. Back in his corner, he waited, standing up. His seconds had crawled out through the ropes, taking the canvas stool with them. Diagonally across the squared ring, Danny faced him. The gong struck, and the battle were on. The audience howled its delight. Never had it seen a battle open more convincingly. The papers were right. It were a grudge fight. 3/4 of the distance Danny covered in the rush to get together, his intent to eat up the Mexican lad plainly advertised. They assailed, not one blow, not two, nor a dozen. It was a gyroscope of blows, a whirlwind of destruction. Rivera were nowhere. He were overwhelmed, buried beneath avalanches of punches, lived from every angle and position by past master of the art. He was overborne, swept back against the ropes, separated by the referee, and swept back against the ropes again. It was not a fight. It was a slaughter, a massacre. Any audience, save a prize-fighting one, would have exhausted its emotions in that first minute. Danny was certainly showing what he could do. A splendid exhibition. Such was the certainty of the audience, as well as its excitement and favouritism, that it failed to take notice that the Mexican still stayed on his feet. He forgot Rivera. Rarely saw him, so closely was he enveloped in Danny's man-eating attack. A minute of this went by, and 2 minutes. Then, in a separation, he caught a clear glimpse of the Mexican. His lip was cut, his nose was bleeding. As he turned and staggered into a clinch, the welts of oozing blood from his contacts with the ropes showed red bars across his back. What the audience did not notice was that his chest was not heaving, and his eyes were coldly burning as ever. Too many aspiring champions in the cruel welter of the training camps had practiced this man-eating attack on him. He had learned to live through for a compensation from $50 He had learned to live through for a compensation of from $50 a go up to $15 a week. A hard school, and he was schooled hard. Then happened the amazing thing. The whirling, blurring mix-up ceased suddenly. Rivera stood alone. Danny, the redoubtable Danny, lay on his back. His body quivered as consciousness strove to return to it. He had not staggered and sunk down, nor had he gone over in a long slumping fall. The right hook of Rivera had dropped him in mid-air, the abruptness of death. The referee shoved Rivera back with one hand and stood over the fallen gladiator, counting the seconds. He used the custom of prize-fighting audience to cheer a clean knockdown blow. This audience did not cheer. The thing had been too unexpected. They watched the toil of the seconds in silence. And through this silence, the voice of Roberts rose exultantly. I told you he was a two-handed fighter. By the 5th second, Danny was rolling over onto his face. When 7 were counted, he rested on one knee, ready to rise after the count of 9, and before the count of 10. If his knee still touched the floor at 10, he was considered down, and also out. The instant his knee left the floor, he was considered up, and in that instant it was Rivera's right to try and put him down again. Rivera took no chances. The moment the knee left the floor, he would strike again. He circled round, but the referee circled in between, and Rivera knew that the second he counted were very slow. All gringers were against him, even the referee. At 9, the referee gave Rivera a sharp thrust back. You're unfair, but enabled Danny to rise, a smile back in his lip. Doubled partly over, with arms wrapped around his face and abdomen, he cleverly stumbled into a clinch. By all the rules of the game, the referee should have broken it, but he did not, and Danny clung on like a surf-battered barnacle, and moment by moment recuperated. The last minute of the round were going fast. If he could live to the end, he would have a full minute in his corner to revive. And live to the end he did, smiling through all desperateness and extremity. The smile that won't come off, someone yelled, and the audience laughed loudly in its relief. The kick that Grease has got is something god-awful, Danny gasped in his corner to his advisor, while his handlers worked frantically over him. The 2nd and 3rd rounds were tame. Danny, being consummate ring general, stalled and blocked, and held on, devoting himself to recovering from that dazzling 1st round blow. In the 4th round he was himself again, jarred and shaken, nevertheless, and his good condition had enabled him to regain his vigour. But he tried no man-eating tactics. The Mexican had proved a tartar. Instead, he brought to bear his best fighting powers. In tricks and skill and experience, he was the master, and though he could land nothing vital, he proceeded scientifically to chop and wear down his opponent. He landed 3 blows to Rivera's 1. They were punishing blows only, and not deadly, for the sum of many of them that constituted deadliness. He was respectful of this two-handed dub, the amazing short-arm kicks in both his fists. In defence, Rivera developed a disconcerting straight left. Again and again, attack after attack, he straight-lefted away from him with accumulated damage to Danny's mouth and nose. Danny would pro him. That's why he was a common champion. He could change from style to style of fighting at will. He now devoted himself to infighting, and this he was particularly good. It enabled him to avoid the other's straight left. Here he set the house wild repeatedly, capping it with a marvellous lock, break and lift with an inside uppercut, raised the Mexican in the air and dropped him to the mat. Rivera rested on one knee, making the most of the count, and in the soul of him he knew the referee would count a short second on it. Again, in the 7th, Danny achieved a diabolical inside uppercut. He succeeded only in staggering Rivera. In the ensuing moment of defenceless helplessness, he smashed him with another blow through the ropes. Rivera's body bounced on the edge of the newspaperman below, and they boosted him back to the edge of the platform outside the ropes. He rested on one knee while the referee raced off the 2nd. Inside the ropes, through which he must duck to enter the ring, Danny waited for him. Nor did the referee intervene or thrust Danny back. The house was beside itself with delight. "Kill him, Danny, kill him," with a cry. Scores of voices took it up until it looked like a war chant of wolves. Danny did his best, but Rivera, at the count of 8 instead of 9, came unexpectedly through the ropes, safely into a clinch. Now the referee worked, tearing him away to be hit, giving Danny every advantage an unfair referee can give. But Rivera lived, and the days cleared from his brain. They were all of a piece. They were the 8 gringos, and they were all unfair. And in the worst of his visions continued to flesh and sparkle in his brain. Long lines of railroad tracks simmered across the desert, rurales and American constables, prisons, calabooses, tramps at water tanks, all the squalid and painful panorama of his odyssey after Rio Blanco, the strife. And resplendent and glorious, he saw the great red revolution sweeping across his land. The guns were there before him. Every hated face was a gun. It was for the guns he fought. He was the guns. He was the revolution. He fought for all of Mexico. The audience began to grow incensed with Rivera. Why didn't he take the licking that were appointed him? Of course he was going to be licked, but why should he be so obstinate about it? Very few were interested in him, and they were the certain definite percentage of a gambling crowd that plays long shots. Believing Danny to be the winner, nevertheless they had put their money on the Mexican at 4-10 and 1-3. More than a trifle was up on the point of how many rounds Rivera could last. Wild Money had appeared at the ringside, proclaiming that he could not last 7 rounds, or even 6. The winner of this, now that their cash risks were aptly settled, had joined in cheering on the favourite. Rivera refused to be licked. Through the 8th round, his opponent strove vainly to repeat the uppercut. In the 9th, Rivera stunned the house again. In the midst of a clinch, he broke the lock with a quick lithe movement, and in the narrow space between their bodies, his right lifted from the waist. Danny went to the floor and took the safety of the count. The crowd was appalled. He was being bested at his own game. His famous right uppercut had been worked back on him. Rivera made no attempt to catch him as he rose at 9. The referee were openly blocking the play, but it stood clear when the situation reversed and Rivera who desired to rise. Twice in the 10th, Rivera put through the right uppercut, lifted from waist to his opponent's chin. Danny grew desperate. The smile never left his face as he went back to his man-eating rushes. Whirlwind as he would, he could not damage Rivera, while Rivera, through the blur and whirl, dropped into the mat 3 times in succession. Danny did not recuperate so quickly now. By the 11th round he was in a serious way. From then till the 14th he put up the gamest exhibition of his career. He stalled and blocked, fought parsimoniously and strove to gather strength. Also he fought as foully as a successful fighter knows how. Every trick and device he employed, buttoning the clinches with the semen of accident, pinioning Rivera's glove between arm and body, heeling his glove on Rivera's mouth to clog his breathing. Often in the clinches, through his cut and smiling lip, he snarled insults unspeakable and vile in Rivera's ear. Everybody, from the referee to the others, was with Danny and was helping Danny, and they knew what he had in mind. Bested by this surprise box of an unknown, he would pin them all on a single punch. He offered himself for punishment, fished and fainted and drew for that one opening that would enable him to whip a blow through with all his strength and turn the tide. Another and greater fighter had done before he might do. A right and a left, the solar plexus and across the jaw. He could do it, for he was noted for the strength of punches that remained in his arm as long as he could keep to his feet. Rivera's seconds were not half caring for him in the intervals between rounds. Their towels made a show of him, but drove little air into his panting lungs. Spiger everybody talked advice to him, but Rivera knew it were wrong advice. Everybody were against him. He was surrounded by treachery. In the 14th round, he put Danny down again, and himself stood resting, hands dropped aside, while the referee counted. In the other corner, Rivera had been noting suspicious whisperings. He saw Michael Kelly make his way to Roberts and bend and whisper. Rivera's ears were a cat's, desert trained, and he caught snatches of what was said. He wanted to hear more, and when his opponent arose, he manoeuvred the fight to the clinch, over against the rope. Go to, dear Michael. Roberts nodded. Danny's got to win. I stand to lose a mint. Got a ton of money covered, my own. If he lost the 15th, I'm bust. A boy of mine should put something across. And thereafter Rivera saw no more visions. They were trying to job him. Once again he dropped Danny and stood resting his hand at his side. Robert stood up. That settled him, he said. Go to your corner. He spoke with authority, as he often had spoken to Rivera at the training quarters. But Rivera looked hatred at him, and he waited for Danny to rise. Back in his corner, in the minute interval, Kelly, the promoter, came and talked to Rivera. Throw it, damn you, he rasped in a harsh, low voice. You gotta lay down, Rivera. Stick with me, I'll make your future. I'll let you lick Danny next time. But here's where you laid down. Rivera showed with his eyes the earth. He made neither sign of assent nor dissent. Why don't you speak? Kelly demanded, angrily. You lose anyway, Spider arrogantly supplemented. The referee will take it away from you. Listen to Kelly and lay down. Lay down, kid, Kelly pleaded, and I'll help you to the championship. Rivera did not answer. I will, so help me, kid. With the strike of the gong, Rivera sensed something impending. The house did not. Whatever it was there inside the ring with him, very close. Danny's alacerity seemed returned to him. The confidence of advice of his advance frightened Rivera. Some trick were about to be worked. Danny rushed, but Rivera refused the encounter. He sidestepped away into safety. What the other wanted was a clinch. It was, in some way, necessary for the trick. Rivera backed and circled away, yet he knew sooner or later the clinch and the trick would come. Desperately he resolved to draw it. He made as if to effect the clinch with Danny's neck rush. Instead, at the last instant, just as their bodies should have come together, Rivera darted nimbly back, and in the same instant Danny's corner raised a cry of foul. Rivera had fooled them. The referee paused irresolutely. The decision that trembled on his lips were never uttered, for a shrill boy's voice from the gallery piped, "Raw work!" Danny cursed Rivera openly and forced him, where Rivera danced away. Also, Rivera made up his mind to strike no more blows at the body. In this, he threw away half his chance of winning the fight. But he knew if he was to win at all, then it was with the outfighting that remained to him. Given the least opportunity, they would lie a foul on him. Danny threw all caution to the winds. For 2 rounds, he tore after and into the boy who dared not meet him at close quarters. Rivera was struck again and again. He took blows by the dozen to avoid the perilous clinch. During the supreme final rally of Danny's, the audience rose to its feet and went mad. It did not understand. All it could see was that the favourite was winning after all. "Why don't you fight?" it demanded wrathfully of Rivera. "You're yellow, open up, you cur, open up, kill him, Danny, kill him, you sure got him, kill him." In all the house, bar none, Rivera was the only cold man. By temperament and blood, he was the hottest passion there. He had gone through such vastly greater heat. The collective passion of 10,000 throats, rising surge on surge, was to his brain no more than the velvet cool of a summer twilight. Into the 17th round, Danny carried his rally. Rivera, under a heavy blow, dropped and sank. His hands dropped helplessly as he reeled backwards. Danny thought it was his chance. The boy was at his mercy. Thus Rivera, feigning, caught him off his guard, lashing out with a clean drive to the mouth. Danny went down. When he arose, Rivera felled on him, held him with a down chop of the right on a neck and jaw. 3 times he repeated this. It were impossible for any referee to call these blows foul. "Oh, Bill, Kelly pleaded with the referee. "I can't," the official lamented. "He won't give me a chance." Danny, battered and heroic, still kept coming up. Kelly and the others near the ring began to cry out for the police to stop him, but Danny's corner refused to throw in the towel. Rivera saw the fat police captain starting awkwardly to climb through the ropes, and was not sure what it meant. There were so many ways of cheating in this game with the gringos. Danny, on his feet, tottered groggily and helplessly before him. The referee and the captain were both reaching for Rivera when he struck the last blow. There was no need to stop the fight, but Danny did not rise. "Count!" Rivera cried hoarsely to the referee. And when the count were finished, Danny's seconds gathered him up and carried him to his corner. "Who wins?" Rivera demanded. Reluctantly, the referee caught his gloved hand and held it aloft. There were no congratulations for Rivera. He walked to his corner unattended, where his seconds had not yet placed his stall. He leaned backwards on the ropes and looked his hatred at them, swept it on and about him, for the old 10,000 gringos were included. His knees trembled under him, and he was sobbing from exhaustion. Before his eyes, the hated faces swayed back and forth in the giddiness of nausea. Then he remembered they were the guns. The guns were his. The revolution could go on. Jesus H. Christ, if that ain't something. Oh, Lord Almighty. Well, I think that's the best Jack London story we've had so far. And by half, Lord. Right, let's run through our checklist then. Just for the sake of completeness. Gold. Yeah, we do have gold. All the money is paid out in gold. It's not a big, major part of it, but it is. I mean, I guess the $5,000 is a pretty significant sum of it. And I guess it's the motivating factor. I mean, not literally gold, most likely, but money and the import of it. Dogs. No dogs in this one. Well, there's one hell of a dog inside that man, but no actual dogs. And transformation. Lord, is there transformation. The smallest man. We hear Rivera go from a starving little boy to one hell of a fighter. God. I mean, that is a story. That is a story in and of itself. The fight against the world. God, it's a brutal sort of stand-up. But it's also a beautiful little thing. One man against an old unjust system. One man against the world. One man who is in himself the revolution. I don't know anything about the Mexican Revolution. But My God, it has my support now. I hope it went well for them. Oh, I suspect Jack London must have been in favour of it. God. That was quite a job he did there. That were a good one. I like most of Jack London's stories, but I think that is my favourite. It surpassed Call of the Wild for me. Damn. Once so long, neither. Well, once so long was long for one of these stories. That runs about an hour almost. But oh boy, that were a good one. The fighting of it, the sheer sort of moment to moment. And it's basically in two parts. The little stuff with the Revolutionary Office. The impressions we have of Rivera from them really, I feel like, adds to it. God. I don't really know what to say about that. I mean, there's probably more that I could analyse and stuff. I just liked it. I really enjoyed that. I think it was good. I mean, yeah. It's a very thrilling story of a man who fights the good fight and wins. I mean, you gotta like that, don't you? I think that's about the long and short of it, if I'm honest. Yeah. Anyway, thank you anyone who's listened and about, which I'm told there is no one. And thank you anyone who is watching this in the future. And yeah, I hope you all have a wonderful rest of your day. I'm gonna go at my ease. Thank you for watching. Goodbye.